Hey everyone, it is later than usual. Yes, I know it's 8:30 my time, and I kind of miss these late night hangouts. I said to be doing more of them, but I really haven't been. My bad. I don't know. I like them and I don't like them. It all depends. I kind of want to start doing more of them because people have asked me to, and I want to be able to just kind of like set it up, and then people can come and go as they please. So I'll have to have like moderators in here. But eventually, if we get to that point, that's great. If not, it's fine too. I'm still getting acclimated to Discord a little bit. Not my favorite thing in the world, but I realize it's kind of a necessity nowadays. And Bullinator and Moon and Cheshire have kind of forced my hand on it. So I will be using it more often on this channel. But anyways, uh, let me check. Let me check the chat here. Make sure you all hear me. Probably talking to myself because I am. I'm the only person here. Well, I got Lurker in here, but he doesn't have a mic. Uh, Jack at all trades. Did Steve get his channel back? No, I have not yet. I saw your question, but the in the debate that we just watched, but the chat has already closed because I was getting some food. I was getting a chimichanga that I was heating up. And it was good, by the way. But no, the judge still needs to dismiss Kyle's lawsuit, which he will, or his motion to not his lawsuit, sorry, his motion to set aside. That's not going to fly. So that'll be set aside one of these days, hopefully in the next couple days or weeks. And then the channel has been ordered to be turned back to me, but I haven't got it back yet. So in the interim, I have my other channel, and then we're going to be doing stuff like this on this particular channel, which is kind of a the after show for the modern day debate, if I can call it a debate. I don't know what that was. People may not realize I go way back with Darwin's Deity. I mean, he and I have had words going back to Nadia's room. And matter of fact, it was weird because I had gotten back just in time for him to say something along the lines that the only time I've talked to him was on what was it, Matt Slick's stuff with the Council of Google Plus. And he said I was, what, quote, something histrionic and hysterical or something. I've talked to Darwin's on many, many different channels. He's lying through his teeth. I was back in the day with Nadia's room. I talked to him. I had talked to him on MK's channel frequently. He has, however, never been on my channel. He refuses to go to my channel because I don't allow for his style of argumentation to go unchallenged. I like open discussions where people can kind of weigh in if they have a problem with he's saying. He doesn't like that. He wants to have a one-on-one where he can basically steamroll a white belt, which he did tonight, by the way. I'm sorry. I love you, James, but you do. I will agree with DD this one time. You do need to match things up better. Florida Man was out of his depths. He had no idea the topic. And what I would suggest is, especially if you have somebody like DD on, kind of ask what, have a kind of a skeleton idea of what the topic's going to be, right? I mean, I know kind of what the scripts Darwin's going to run, but let's say that Darwin's does want to talk about universals, particulars, justifications, and things like that. You need to have somebody on that can at least understand what he's asking about. Florida Man had no idea. And Florida Man was just one of those typical atheist white belts who just, oh, you're Sky Daddy, magic, Sky Daddy. Any idiot can do that in a debate, if you want to call that a debate. I mean, that takes no education and no knowledge, no reading about any of this stuff, no actual wanting to defeat Darwin's arguments. Anybody can do that. Why would you have somebody like that is a philosophical white belt that doesn't even know what metaphysics is go against Darwin's? That doesn't help anybody. I mean, I like to see Darwin's get destroyed. That's something that I personally enjoy watching. I'm not going to lie. That's my Schadenfreude. I know I mispronounced that word, but I'm not German. Kicks in because I think Darwin's a despicable human being. But I every so often he does get some things correct as far as his arguments. That's where I like for somebody who's knowledgeable to step in and go, okay, let's explain this and explain why it's a bad argument or explain why it just doesn't get you anywhere. So I'm going to attempt to do that a little bit here as people join in. The link to join is in the video description. I think it's actually on the top as well, but I'm not sure if that one still works. I have a permanent link to this particular Discord, and that's the one in the video description. So I don't know if the other one is ephemeral or not. I don't know if it times out, but this one that I just put in the link to join us does not time out. So you can use that one if the other one doesn't work. But you're welcome to come in. I do have some people coming in, but they're all muted, so it doesn't show the muted people. By the way, is just real quick? Is this showing up on the people talking on the outside feed? Because I'm not seeing it. Normally it'll actually show when people are talking. It's not doing that, does it? This one didn't work. This is the one it should be. So when I go and invite people, and I go to copy, and then I'm gonna put that copy in here. That's the one that it copies. Oh, that is different. You're right. All right, so the one I just put in the live chat is the correct one. Let me change it in the live chat or the video description. Then you'll be able to come in. There you go. Now it's updated. So let me know if that that particular link works. I still have a little bit of a cough, and I apologize. I'm trying to mute when I need a cough. So if you hear me kind of cut out, it's me muting. Let's see here. All right, and as people join, I'll make sure that you get roles so you can come in and see the link here if I know who you are. If not, you've got to like introduce yourself and do a mic check. But all right. So, anyways, yeah, the second link works. Thank you, but it's not showing me talking for some reason, and so I'm gonna have to fix that real quick. So, Maki, are you got a mic for a second? Maki, can you talk? Nope. Maybe not. Yeah, this is why I usually do mic checks. All right, let me see if I can. Let me see if I can make a voice widget for this real quick while I'm actually doing a couple different things. Let's see here. Show speaking only. Small avatars. No. Hide names. No. All right. I think I've got a new overlay. Then we'll jump into this real quick. So give me 30 seconds here. I just got to fix my overlay. Paste. Now talking. Audio. No. Audio testing. I don't know. That's weird. It's not showing up the actual speakers for like it usually does. Any idea why? I mean, I got the chat and I got the Steam chat, but it's not showing the actual avatars. Do I have something over it? No. Audio. Oh. Audio. No, I don't get it. Audio. No, it's weird because usually it shows up the actual avatars when talking. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Bullinator, help me. Here's somebody. Oh, there we go. Now I fixed it.
Yeah, you fixed it, Steve.
Yeah, somewhat. Okay. So, I think I knew what I did wrong. Anyways, did you watch that discussion, by the way?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I don't so like bad. Watching Darth Dawkins just because he runs his script, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and that's what this basically was. It was just his script. But unfortunately, James did. I mean, like I said, I agree with D on this. James did not vet this guy, Florida Man, very well because he was just your basic white level atheist that didn't have a clue about metaphysics. Now, if you're going to talk to D, he's going to bring up something about metaphysics. It's just a matter of time, right? So I
always.
I mean, why doesn't he get Jack Ingstrike or somebody, right? Now that would have been cool.
I actually can't stay because my roommates are asleep, but I just came in because you were having issue.
Oh, thank you, buddy. While you're doing that, okay, well, I will give people roles. So thank you, Bill. I fixed it.
Yes, you did.
I can see when people are joining, and I'm giving them roles to join us. Because they won't be able to see the room unless they get roles. I know that much. All right, there we go. All right, so I wish I had a mod in here, but unfortunately, I'm kind of doing this all to myself. So I'm bringing him into the room as I can here. Shoot. Move these guys down here. And then we'll jump into it. All right. So, anyways, let me kind of jump into what I think was Didi's main type of argument here. And I'm probably not going to get it right because Didi's argument isn't really that great. But he does have one thing that he says that is correct. And we'll talk about that real quick. He does talk about, he asked Florida Man about justification and induction. And of course, Florida Man, not understanding what he's asking about, just started to go run the whole science script. Well, we use science, and therefore we can justify induction, or we can say that the uniform of nature is continuous, or whatever he was trying to argue to Darwin's. But Darwin's point is lost upon him. Darwin's point is very simple. It's basically humus induction, saying that there is no justification for the use of induction because any use of to justify induction uses induction, which is circular reasoning. That is correct. Where I think he was trying to confuse Florida Man the most when he started talking about, and again, I got there late. I didn't get there about 45 minutes in. So if there's anything prior or after that, please let me know, and I'll turn the mic over to you guys here and here. But prior to that, he was talking about universals and particulars. And this goes back to Aristotelian concepts of what is a universal, what is a particular. And basically, this is in a nutshell. Think of a universal as something that has a property that has ness to it. So if I say squareness, greenness, dogness, these are universals. Basically, there's actually a principle called the necessity principle, I believe it's called, that you've add any s to anything, it becomes a universal or something like that. So he's asking, what about concrete forms of these universals called particulars? These are actual instances. For example, this goes to the type token distinctions. If I say there's a universal class of dogness, so my dog exists, my dog is a particular that has the particular property of the universal dogness. All squares that exist have this particular instances of having squareness. That's the universal. Plato, on his theory of forms, if I remember correctly, kind of thought there was one particular object they're all pointing to. In other words, there's one Platonic realm where the green exists. And anything that has a green property, anything that is an instantiation or particular of this universal greenness, comes from that one abstract plane, right? That one existence. So it's all manifestations of the same type of thing. Now, again, I could be butchering this. I haven't looked into the problem of universals for quite some time. So if somebody wants to come in that understands the Aristotelian metaphysics better, by all means, take the mic and explain to people. Because a lot of people don't usually use Aristotelian metaphysics. And I think one of the reasons why Darwin talks about this stuff is because of that very reason. I mean, most people are not that interested in Aristotelian metaphysics, just like they're not that interested when you see people running Thomist arguments, right? I mean, I'm not a Thomist. I've tried to read some of Thomas Aquinas' stuff. It's just messy to me. But the wording that he uses is very specific to his type of writing. Things like potentiality, actuality. A lot of these terms that you'll find for a Thomist to be using is very specific to their type of argumentation. So if you want to argue against a Catholic who's arguing Thomistic arguments, you probably want to find somebody that knows about Thomistic arguments. This was an instance where Florida Man didn't understand Didi's positions because he doesn't know what a universal is. He doesn't know what a particular is. Now, again, excuse me, I've really got a cough, so I'm trying not to cough into the mic because that's really tactless. But I think it was a very poor matchup. But to dismiss Didi's arguments out of hand is probably not the best way to go, because this is what I see a lot when I see a white belt atheist go, oh, well, it's just darn Deity. Just dismiss his arguments. Well, that doesn't do anybody good. Like I said, Florida Man was not the right person to go against Darwin's Deity because I'm sorry, he had no argument whatsoever. I don't think there was a winner of this particular debate because Darwin's Deity was just running script and Florida Man was completely clueless. So I want to know what you guys think of it. Mr. Sheriff, you watched it a little bit of it, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even know that it was happening, but I do know of Darwin's Deity, and he's a pain in the ass.
Well, yeah, because because he's not there to teach anybody. He's not there to help anybody. What he wants to do is mock the white belt atheist. He wants to make fun of the atheist that doesn't bother with any of these things. And there's a lot of them in that particular discussion. I mean, somebody had actually said something along the lines of, "Oh, metaphysics, doesn't exist," or "How do you know metaphysics exist?" And it's like, what? Metaphysics is the study of intangible things for the most part. Things like knowledge, things of like belief, things like space, like time. What is constitutive of knowledge? What constitutes a justified belief over a non-justified belief? What is something that means to say that it exists, that it has existence? These are metaphysics. These are questions that have been around for a very long time. And science is predicated in some way on metaphysical concepts of how do we know something. I would say that scientific methodology is based upon philosophy, absolutely, right? I mean, the whole paradigm of methodological naturalism is a philosophy. And so when you ask, well, how do you know something in science? That is predicated on certain metaphysical understandings and certain metaphysical theories. Like even in science, when you say, well, how do you know something? Are you using justified true belief? Are you using it as just as information? I think that most times there is a lot of overlap there. So even when somebody says, hey, why do you know this in science? You still have to have a justification for why you think you know it. And I think that's where metaphysics comes in, because science doesn't tell you how you know something. Right? Science is not the tool to determine what theory you use to qualify whether you can say I know something is true or not. That's where philosophy comes in. That's where metaphysics comes in. So, well, who did watch it? Michael Jackson. Did you watch it? I think, yeah, you were there, Jackson. I'm just calling out random people in here that I saw watching the debate. I mean, there's a lot of people in here, but they're all muted. That's one thing I hate about Discord. People come in and everybody just mutes.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if they know that they're muted.
Yeah, you have to unmute. And
I just didn't want to step on anybody's toes.
Oh, is that Rez?
Hello.
Hey, bud. Did you watch?
No, I stopped watching anything related to Darth Dawkins a while ago after I pretty much went through all the VODs of him melting down on his Discord and shit like that.
Yeah, it's so funny. He did say something about me having histrionics, and I'm like, pot kettle black. I was like, I mean, when has Darwin Deity not has this weird outburst because he's being modded unfairly according to him? This is why he's never been on any of my channels. He has never been on the Great Debate Community. He's never been on my personal channel. He's never been on Non Sequitur. And by the way, I did not beg him to go on Non Sequitur. That's an outright lie. I've never begged any guest. And like I said, he actually lied about me and him only have a discussion on Matt Slick's network over there, the Council of Google Plus. I've talked to Darwin's long before that stuff came around. So
yeah, one of the things that bothers me most about people in general is hypocrisy, and he's one of the biggest hypocrites I've ever heard. Like you're saying he gets modded unfairly all the time, and yet if you watch any of his Discord recordings, he's constantly muting people and talking over them over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, because he won't let anybody have a conversation.
While telling them to stop talking over him. Like, it's infuriating. I can't watch it.
Yeah, well, that's what he did to me a long time ago. I believe it was in, if I'm not mistaken, and again, I could be, but I think it was Antonio Fletcher's rooms. Now, I used to go into Antonio Fletcher's room, and Darwin Deity would be there. Again, Darwin's lying if he only said that I only talked to him in the Council of Google Plus. That's outright BS. But I was in Antonio Fletcher's room, and of course, who did he give mods to? Darwin's Deity, right? So Darwin Deity is constantly trying to mute me and trying to silence me, and I'm trying to, he doesn't know how to have an actual conversation, and that's why he and I do not get along, because he wants to have some kind of formal, informal debate where there's mods specifically catering to his every whim, and I don't do that. And I want to have an actual conversation with him explaining why he's not correct, and he won't do that, obviously, any longer.
He's not interested in a discussion. He wants a soapbox.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree. I just think he was looking for somebody to bully at the very least. He has no interest in having an honest discussion with anybody.
Well, because he's an egotist. I mean, he's all about him. He thinks he is the smartest person in the room, and that his unassailable arguments should convince anybody that God exists. When he's probably converted more people to atheism than anybody single-handedly on the planet. I mean, he's probably converted more to atheism than Matt Dillahunty. You really want to think about it. I mean, because people are like, who the hell wants to be like this guy? But I mean, I wish people would actually understand the topic before they go against him. I mean, because he does have some word salad, true. But a lot of stuff that he does talk about is legit stuff. You can't just by fiat dismiss it by the way Florida Man was doing, because now Florida Man looks like he's inept. And how does that help anybody? I mean, did Florida Man even answer the question about universals and particulars? Which, by the way, I don't know if it was a well-formulated question or argument. That's why I was hoping somebody else who was watching it may kind of be able to suss it out, because I think he was trying to argue something along the lines, is the universe itself a particular, meaning does it have concreteness? Does it exist? Is it an instance of something else? And if it is, well, what is that instance of? Because there's only one universe. You know, and what is he talking about? Some kind of universal as in universalness, as in the universe has some property to it? I don't know. That's what I would have liked to suss out with Darwin's argument of what he's referring to about why we can't have a universe that's concrete, and why does that need a deity? Because somebody in the live chat had said Darwin's on the Munchausen trilemma will resort to infinite regress, which seems odd to me because he posits God as a metaphysical necessity, and those are very contradicting positions. I mean, why would he go to infinite regress if he's positing God as a metaphysical necessity, which he's allowed to do? But
if I may,
yeah, please.
I think I have the answer, but I'm very bad at metaphysics, so please forgive me if I speak incorrectly. But I think what he was trying to get Florida Man to do was, he is obsessed with the prime mover question. He always comes back to this.
Okay.
He's trying to say, I think he's trying to get people to admit, if we do not accept God as the prime mover of the universe, we must give him an explanation of what is the prime mover of the universe, excluding God, which I don't believe anyone really has an answer to.
All right. So his argument would be like this. The argument is very similar to the argument in motion, right? One of Aquinas' arguments, which is, for something to be in motion, something had to initially be the prime mover, the initial cause, or the uncaused cause that caused something to move, right? This is something relating to Darwin's arguments. What's the prime mover? What's the prime cause? The simple answer is we don't know. And to me, any type of argument towards the explanation is just that. It's just a hypothesis, because there's only real three explanations not even explanations. There's only real three paths you can go, and that is part of the Munchausen trilemma, so to speak. It's infinite regress, brute fact or axiomatic assumption, or metaphysical necessity. One of those seems to me has to be the case. Either the universe has this infinite regress where there is no prime mover, there's some kind of causal relationship to something that was contingent, that was the first prime mover, which is a brute fact we may not be able to know about. Let's say a breaking of symmetry of some sort. Like, why is there more matter than antimatter? Because of some breaking of CP violation, or something that just for some reason nature prefers matter over antimatter. There might be something with chirality, dealing with spins, which something along the lines of is more likely to have a spin in one direction than the other. Although I don't know what directionality would mean, in the before the big, well, not before the Big Bang, but we'll say at t equals 0. But there could be just a brute fact there, or there could be a metaphysical necessity. And if he's positing the metaphysical necessity is God, okay, he can do that, but that's all it is just an assertion. He doesn't have any reason beyond that to posit a God, in my opinion.
But isn't his assertion hypocritical, and his assertion that there is a God is the prime mover? Because if he's saying that everything has to have a prime mover, where's the prime mover of God?
No, he's not, and that's something that I kind of explained on Facebook the other day. That's the reason being is, it's not special pleading for a theist to say the prime mover is God and that God has no cause. This is something atheists need to stop strawmanning theists about. If you posit something as a metaphysical necessity, a metaphysical necessity must exist in all possible worlds. It cannot fail to exist in any possible world. Therefore, it's not special pleading. It would only be special pleading if you say, hey, this is a contingent thing that exists in some possible worlds, and it doesn't have a cause, but all contingent things have a cause. That would be maybe special pleading. We're contingent things. But if you posit a metaphysical necessity from which the contingency comes from as a causal chain, that's not special pleading. Because then you're saying God has to exist because he cannot fail to exist. He has to be in every single possible world. That's fine. Because
that makes sense.
Yeah, because special pleading is when you say all of X in some set are this except for one element, and you're excluding this one element without justification. So if you say all contingent things have a cause except humans, that would be a special pleading because you have no justification to take humans out of that set of things that are contingent. So, a lot of theists don't realize they're doing that. A lot of theists don't even realize that they're positing a metaphysical being, which makes it not special pleading. But a lot of atheists try to straw man them on that. And that's perfectly fine for them to do. Let them posit a metaphysical thing. But metaphysical being, the problem that you run into is if you posit a metaphysical necessity, where does it get you? Because it doesn't satisfy a principle of sufficient reason. If I say to you, Matt, look, let's look at the origin of the universe, the root cause of all the universe. The prime mover, the cause of the cause, all this jargon, which by the way is mostly Thomas type speak. But let's assume that there is some kind of explanation to be had. Okay, something satisfies principle of sufficient reason, and I say to you that reason is God. How does it explain anything? It has no explanatory power, and mostly because it raises two significant questions. One, why did God create this actualized world as opposed to any other actualized world? Right? Why are we the actualized world that God picked? Was it arbitrary? Or was it out of some kind of necessity? Those two are very important questions because if God just made this world because it was arbitrary, then there is really no explanation. It was just because he wanted to. That's not an explanation. And if he did it because there was reasons of something of higher value than God, which, by the way, is really something Christians don't want to often have to even think about because that means something of value is higher than God, and God had to be beholden to something. He had to say, hey, I had to make this world because I had no other choice. They don't like that, right? But that means that what's the cause of that higher value, right? So just by positing a God doesn't get Darwin's Deity anywhere. And that's where I think Florida Man should have gone after him about. What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, that's a super good point.
And this is why I don't like seeing people like Florida Man debate Darwin's, because if you don't understand these types of things, it's going to make the conversation really, really, really bad.
Well, it doesn't help that Darwin likes to bulldoze over people also.
Oh, yeah, no, he's a horrible debater. But just because you're a horrible debater doesn't mean he doesn't understand some of these topics. And he's gotten better. See, you guys got to remember, Darwin's have had years of practice, right?
I have a question that might sound really dumb.
Go for it.
All right, let's say they posit a metaphysical being. If they start giving that metaphysical being a bunch of physical attributes, does that keep them metaphysical, or does that transcend them into the physical?
No, I don't have a problem with them giving attributes. These are things like he was talking about, particulars and universals. What would be the properties of God? Divineness is a universal. NES.
Well, I mean, if he like let's say he creates a human, the human wouldn't be metaphysical. The human would be physical, but there's got to be some kind of
metaphysics doesn't
bridge
mean
there.
Non-physical. Metaphysics just means
sorry.
You're a metaphysical being because you exist. You have actuality. These are metaphysical terms. Yeah, don't confuse metaphysics with supernatural. They're vastly different things. Metaphysics deals with existence, and among many other things. Aya Moon, $5 super chat or super sticker. Thank you, Moon. To give kissies.
Another point he brought up that I'm kind of chewing in my head, if I may. I know I'm going to screw this up. He talked about like defining things. Like he says, whenever we agree that we see a dog is a dog, and that word dog now represents that. And I was sitting there thinking, no, the word dog can mean many different things depending on the context. Or am I just thinking the wrong way?
Yeah. I mean, these are semantic things. The word dog, is a signifier. It's a word that represents a group of things. And then we have instantiation of those things, like individual dogs. Like say I have a dog named Spot. My dog Spot is a particular that has the universal dogginess. So in the set of all things that have dogginess, my dog Spot is in that set. It is a concrete example of a particular instance or instantiation of these universals. That's what he was trying to explain. Now, you can call it whatever you want. The word dog itself is just sounds we make that signify something that represents these sets.
Okay, so he was just so wordy about it, I lost.
Well, yeah, because he can never explain anything to a way anybody would ever understand it. That's not Darwin's gig, right? Darwin's not there to educate. Darwin's there is to simply embarrass people like Florida Man, which I think he did, by the way. That's all he got. He gets off on that. He loves to do that. It's a shtick for how many years? I've known Darwin for what, 6, 7 years? And like I said, he's improved because he's learned from his past. He's much more of a rhetorician and, he's much worse than he was before because he actually understands things a little bit better. Does that make sense?
The only thing he's really gotten better is being sticking to his script, rising it, and just talking. That's all he's good.
Yeah, but he's gotten better at avoiding the landmines. Right. For example,
Fish galloping is his main talent.
Oh, he's very good at that. Yeah. Yeah, I just give you roles, jack of all trades, and brought you in. Okay, so he is really good at these things. He does like to embarrass people. I really wish Darwin would have, tried to explain these concepts to Florida Man rather than just... well, you know what? I take that back. I don't think Florida Man really cared. He wasn't there to learn anything, which is another reason why I find these debates to be boring. Colorado Biker Prepper, he remembers these things. He's like having flashbacks to 2016 and Dee's bullshit. Yeah, I remember 2016. It was only 4 years ago. I do remember having conversations with Darwin's Deity and explaining to him, I'm a classic foundationalist for the most part. I just tend to these things. I tend to classical foundationalism. I tend to JDP+. I tend to nominalism, although I respect mathematical Platonism. He has a hard time with those types of things. Right? Because he doesn't like going against somebody who's a classical foundationist. He doesn't like going against somebody who's probably a nominalist, because a nominalist denies universals, which makes his whole question moot. It makes it moot. If he asked me, well, what's your foundations for these things? Why, do you think universals are something that exist, that you have particular instances? I'm like, I'm a nominalist. I don't really think universals exist. I just think they're all individual instances, but they're not instantiations. Now granted, I don't really care if that's true or not, to be honest with you. I'm not somebody who sticks by nominalism, and I don't necessarily deny the problem of universals, right? But, to get around his argument, all you got to do is adopt a nominalist approach,
Is the universe universal?
Well, that's, I think, maybe that was his argument, because, the universe is only one thing, right? There's only one unique universe, right? So the universe, if it exists as a concrete object, as a particular... To be a particular, you have to be from a set of things, a set of universals. Something that universal is something, like I said, that has a property like universalness. So is our universe just a property of the universalness? That's the kind of thing I was kind of wondering where he was going with that. I don't understand his full argument when it comes to that.
Well, that also depends, again, if you don't subscribe to multiverse theory.
Well, no, multiverse wouldn't be included in our universe. When we're talking about universe in a philosophical sense, we're not talking about it in an astrophysics type sense. A universe in physics is everything that exists, everything that can exist, would exist, potential, actual. These things are concepts that exist in some capacity or concept as a whole. So all the multiverse would be included in the concept of a universe in that form. Because when we say universe, we're talking about the actualized universes in all the possible worlds. So let's say you have an infinite amount of possible worlds. This actualized world is indexical, meaning the only one that exists to us that is actualized is the one that we happen to be in. That includes everything. That's a set of all things, or all things that even has potential. That's the way I would kind of explain it. But it also gets into more complicated things of where does mind come in. Because I know Darwin likes to run a script about, what about consciousness? What about mind? There's something to be said about a concept called conceptualism, where you have basically nominalism and a form of realism, where you you think that these universals like dogginess are only concepts within the mind. They have no ontology. They have no existence outside of just concepts. That's called a conceptualist position. And I think Darwin's is trying to say to the atheist, well, how do these universals exist if you believe that the universe is the only thing that exists? You're a monist, not a dualist, and you posit everything is material. Then how do you have these universals that exist if they are something that don't exist in concepts only and the mind? So I'm trying to do the best job in trying to parse out Darwin's logic and reasoning. But if you can do a better job, please, by all means, because I don't like Aristotelian stuff that much. Does anybody want to anybody who listened to the debate want to take a crack at it?
I mean, I'm just here to have dunk on.
It's not easy stuff, okay? It's not easy stuff. This is what I'm saying. Why would you have somebody like Florida Man go against Darwin?
He's so insanely stuck on this one script that has not evolved any idea he's ever.
Well, yeah, because he thinks it's a brilliant defeater, right? He thinks he kind of like the way Saitan Bernacate thinks, that his argument is so good that it could just destroy any atheist. And I don't see how they're finding that to be the case, because everybody I know don't find their arguments convincing. I've never met an atheist that went, damn, I listened to Saitan and I listened to Darwin's Deity, and man, you know what? I'm convinced a theist now. The only one that might come close was MK, if you guys remember him. MK was insane, though, but I mean, I think MK was probably the only person who identified as an atheist that got DD to convince him that God exists. But this was a guy that also believed that if you prayed hard enough to God, he could actually give you lasers to shoot out of your eyes. So, yeah.
I want lasers.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool, right? Yeah. MK had a lot of weird beliefs. Yeah, as Colorado Biker Prep says, DD hasn't changed in 7 years, but he has, again, gotten his weapon more sharp, I think, right? And this is why you need better people to go against him. This is why, I would love to see him and Jack Ainstrike talk. I love when they do. And you know what? I've seen him talk to Jack before, so I don't know why he'll talk to Jack occasionally, but he won't even bother to come in here. He's welcome to join us.
Do you think that Darwin's Deity is even capable of explaining his positions on stuff?
Some of it. I mean, he explains Hume's problem of induction pretty well. I saw him on another channel where he actually explained Hume's problem of induction, and he was right on target, right? I mean, when you say to an atheist, hey, how do you justify that laws of physics will be the same tomorrow as they are today, right? There is no justification. That is a blind faith commitment. That is a properly basic belief, because you cannot use uniform in nature or induction to justify use of induction. You can't say because I saw it yesterday, it'll be the same tomorrow, because I'm using induction to do that, and that's circular. And he's absolutely right on that.
But if that is the case, then how can we make claims of models that make predictions if physics were not constant?
Because these are probabilistic things. We're saying that it is more likely the case, based upon our understanding of the models, that this is what we can make a predictive value for, right? But that's not what he's asking you. He's asking you, how do you justify it? Justification is a principle of rationality. Justification is what's warranted to say that you are rational to hold this particular position. And when we're talking about induction, how do we use induction? You cannot rationally justify induction, because every attempt to use it, to rationalize induction, requires the use of induction. Every one of them.
Right, but you could make the same argument back to him as, how do you justify your belief in God?
Oh, I know his script. His script is because God does not change, and God tells me that he's not going to change the laws of physics. And God knows all things. And because God knows all things, he'll tell me that.
So he has a special line to God, and God speaks to him?
I don't think he claims God directly speaks to him, but he can know for I don't know what's his exact thing nowadays, but he claims that he can know because of the Word of God, because he has a personal relationship with God, that God could tell him that the laws of physics won't know, because he knows all things, and therefore he has a justification to use induction. He has a justification to assume uniform nature, because God, the Creator that knows all things, has told him this. That's his argument.
So he has an imaginary justification.
Yep.
Well, you have to then you have the onus to show that's imaginary. Now you've made a claim that it's imaginary, and then he'll go, well, okay, demonstrate to me or show to me your justification for why it's imaginary, because you're making a strong atheist claim at that point, right?
If I was arguing with Darwin's deity, I don't know how I would do it. Like if I was being honest, but if I was arguing with Darwin's deity, I don't feel like I would have any onus to be honest. So I would just tell him that I have a direct line to super God, and he tells me that your God's fake and you're just insane, and he can't say shit about that.
Yeah, that's the problem with that is, again, I've heard all these things before. The problem with that is by claiming it a super God, you're just renaming the God that you're just using a different term. He's already claiming a maximally great being, right? He's already claiming.
No, mine says that he's crazy and he's just imagining that.
Yeah, and then you borrow from his worldview, and
No, he's borrowing from mine, but he's getting it wrong and he's crazy.
Yeah, he'll just say that you're just being a sophist.
Well, no, he'll call you a child and say, why didn't you bring me an adult to debate with me?
Well, I mean, no, he was right on that. Look at, no offense to Florida Man. Florida Man didn't have a clue. I mean, he was way out of his depths. Way
he did the same thing to Shannon Q.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true too. But I mean, he does it to anybody who just, I mean, well, the thing is when Darwin knows when he can manipulate somebody by using actual information, he'll do that because he wants to make them look stupid, right? So when he's talking about Hume's induction, he knows what he's talking about, and he makes people look stupid. When he really wants to like go further, then he'll start running the things like universals and things of that nature, like the Aristotelian stuff. But you can't. You have to understand his argument. You can't just actually say, look, I think that you have a magical scary daddy that you're claiming that could give you justification. He accepts his presupposition, right? I mean, he's a presuppositionalist. He presupposes God, which I would get him at. I would say, look, if you presuppose God, and yet God's talking to you, are you presupposing that the God talking to you is a benevolent being that knows all things? Because how would you know that? Because you can't say that I know God exists and is telling me the things that are true if you have to presuppose it first, unless you're building some kind of ontological framework from that, or epistemological framework, which you can, like Reformed epistemology does something similar, I think. But I don't think he does any of that. I don't think he does any of the legwork. What I think he does is just quote Bonson or quote other people. And I like to know his framework to say, look, if you're presupposing God, which is fine, I presuppose all kinds of stuff that I can build an objective framework from and knowledge. How are you doing it? That's the question I would ask him.
But by asserting it.
But yeah,
so,
but what does that mean?
I've been watching him a lot lately. I hang out in Discord. I have a high tolerance for pain. Essentially, he will say, let's see here. How do you form exactly? If I start from the Christian worldview, he literally asserts it. He's like, if this is true,
sure.
Yeah. No. I mean, not simply a presupposition. He points to that as his thing, but I mean, he's still got to accept logic and stuff before he can even get there.
Well, we pointed that out to me before. I think before you even start building a worldview, before you even start building upon precepts, you have to have a foundation, and that foundation is to recognize reality exists, and that you can observe it, and you could formulate things from those observations. You have to do that before you even can come to any kind of conclusion with God. You would have to.
He admits that, but he doesn't realize that he admits it, because he says it comes from revelation from God. But he has to take those steps before he can get there. But what he does is he gets there and he takes it and he puts it at the beginning.
Yeah, he moves the conclusion because it would be a conclusion that God exists, for whatever reason. But he puts it at the very basic. Say, I presuppose God exists. Well, how do you even have the tools to presuppose God exists? You don't even have the tools to do it. You haven't even recognized his reality yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Like, I agree with you, but they see when I said that his whole entire God thing was imaginary, I would have to prove that like he would have to prove God exists.
Well, you don't have to prove. No.
You don't
have to prove it. What you have to do is justify it. There's a huge difference.
Well, right. I guess he would have to justify that God exists.
He believes he has. Well, he believes he has. His arguments are justifications to him why he believes that. Now then he asks the atheist, why do you justify your belief that God doesn't? Or if you're a weak atheist, why do you not believe? Either one requires justification. That goes back to my burden of proof argument. All positions require a burden of proof. Even not believing requires a burden of proof to be rational.
Well, what is justification? Is that like a personal thing?
Yeah, mostly. It is. I mean, generally speaking, we're talking about our own self-assessments and our own beliefs. Justification is what ourselves we hold to hold something to be the case. For the most part, although there are other things like, you get into like knowledge justifications. And if you claim that you have knowledge to somebody else, there are Gettier cases where you wouldn't necessarily have knowledge, right? Because you think you have justification, but your justification is false. Or your justification could be true, and there just could be epistemic luck issues.
But the point is, he's trying to get you to give justifications for, like, if you say, I want evidence, well, what's your justification of what evidence is? So that way he can just hand wave away your entire argument and say, you have no justification for your beliefs, therefore you have no rights to speak to me. You're an idiot. Go away.
Well, that's what he's trying to undermine atheistic worldviews, right? And now, granted, I think he does them very poorly. Yes, of course. But that doesn't mean what he's saying is should be just dismissed out of hand. No,
I didn't say that.
Yeah, so an atheist still needs to understand some of these concepts. What it means to justify a belief, what it means to have knowledge, what it means to have a burden of proof. And he gets on these atheists who don't understand these concepts, and especially people like Florida Man who go into these debates with Darwin's Deity completely unarmed. He didn't have a single shred of understanding what Darwin's Deity was saying. And this is why I think that if people are going to debate Darwin, you should have a skeleton of what the topic needs to be about, and not let him gish gallop and say, okay, we are going to talk about universals. We are going to talk about induction. We're going to talk about whatever, and have it very specific. So he cannot go from one topic to another, because you can spend 2 hours just talking about one of those specific things, right? So.
Well, that's what makes him infuriating.
Yeah.
The topic was, atheism versus Christianity worldview, but then he goes into his script, and when you try to get him off that script, he acts like you're evading the question. He never answers any questions posed to him. He just goes right back into his script, and then declares victory because you're like, that's not, what's going on.
Yeah. Johnny Miller in the live chat asked a question. What's your burden of proof for you failed to convince me? And Rayleigh's S answered it perfectly. The burden of justifications for rejection of proposition is having good rational justification for rejecting it. By the way, I wouldn't say rejecting. I would say not accepting. And the reason being is rejecting in logic means to hold the proposition to be false. It's to deny it or to disbelieve it. That's what is generally understood. It's called Frege-Geach rejectionism. So if I say I reject P, it's generally more understood to say that P is false. So I would say the burden for not accepting a proposition is having a good rational justification for not accepting it. For example, Johnny, if I say I exist and you say you have failed me that I exist, the first question I'd ask you is, why do you not believe that I exist? What is your burden for that? Because a condition of rationality is that other minds exist. We all have to kind of assume that. It's kind of normative to think that other people exist, right? So if you do not think that I exist, if you think that I am just a brain in your mind, why do you think that? Because me failing to convince you that I exist isn't my problem. It's a condition of rationality, just to function society, that I exist. So if you say, Steve, you failed to convince me that you exist, you have what's called irrationality and probably mad. I would say that you're a little bit insane if you didn't believe that I exist. Possibly.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question. Let's say I have like a guy in the next room, and I say that he exists, and you can say that you don't have enough to say that he doesn't exist, but you may not believe me. But what if I keep stacking things on it that, like, because this guy is in this other room, I am even more right in my convictions and you're more wrong? Would that stack?
That doesn't weigh anything.
But would that make you less, like, more to believe that he might not exist at all?
No, it wouldn't affect me at all. That's just me as rhetoric. Yeah, I would like to know, why, what's the reasons why he, like, for example, hey, I go to, let's say, I don't know why this came to mind. Let's say I go to like a talk show, and I'm sitting in that chair, and they say, hey, Steve, we brought your family, and they're waiting in the foyer, to visit you, because, they do that every so often. I've seen that happen before, right? I believe that probably is the case. I have some reason to justify that belief, But if I've seen them screw with people and say, hey, yeah, you know what, we brought your family in, and every single time they've lied to the person, then I'd be like, yeah, I don't believe you because, again, I am justified not to believe you because I've seen you guys pull this trick before. So I even wrote a blog on this very phenomenon that people don't believe that I exist because a lot of people were like, well, we don't hold beliefs, which means they don't believe that I exist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that case, people positing God when never presenting him, wouldn't you be more apt to believe that God doesn't exist?
No, I don't think there's any evidence one way or another when you say that. I mean, if somebody says, look, if God exists and there should be evidence of God's existence, and then you don't see that, it would probably just confirm their version of that deity somewhat. I mean, if they're positing this is our expectation, right? But what are the expectations of a specific God exist? Especially when you have a deity that can hide as much as he wants, right? The whole problem with divine hiddenness. I'm a non-resistant non-believer. God could talk to me anytime.
But that's the frustrating part, and probably one of the foundations of my atheism is if God is so powerful and so potent and wants us to believe in him, why does he hide from us?
Well, yeah, that's a good argument. Divine hiddenness is a good argument. It's one of my go-to arguments for that very reason. Why does God hide when he wants the interpersonal relationship? So like I said, I'm a non-resistant non-believer, yet I don't hear him talking to me, which, by the way, he used to do in old times, right? Why does he not talk to people now? Now you're atheist. So Matt, you what kind of atheist are you? Are you an ACA atheist or like a philosophical atheist?
I'm not sure what you mean by ACA atheist.
I'm sorry. Atheist Community of Austin.
I live in Ohio, so
okay. Well, the ACA is basically the channel that runs the Atheist Experience.
Right, I've watched the Atheist Experience. Yeah. I don't really understand their complete stance on atheism.
They use very stipulative usages, and they hate me because I use philosophical ones. And yet, they've never shown I was wrong. That's the funniest thing. None of them have ever shown I was wrong. They just tried to insult me and to character assassinate me rather than actually go, Steve is right, but we don't use it that way, which is all they have to do. That's literally all they have to do.
Well, in my atheism, I'm going to steal this from, I hate not to be insulting, but I'm going to steal Matt Dillahunty's answers. I'm 99% sure that I don't think there's a God.
Well, yeah, that's strong atheism, though. That's strong atheism. Matt Dillahunty believes all gods are bullshit. He holds the belief there are no gods. He's a strong philosophical atheist.
Well, I believe there is no gods either, but I also leave the possibility that I can be wrong.
Well, sure.
And I'm allowed.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's normative.
But even a God existing doesn't necessarily mean that they're worthy of worship either.
Well, but that's a moral argument, right? There's that's a worthiness for global atheism. If God does exist or a particular God exists, is he worthy of worship? That's an entirely different question of ontology, though, right? But most atheists and most theists are the same way. They leave room for some kind of changing of their beliefs. Now, I would say that certain theists may not, but I've seen atheists do the same thing. Some atheists will say there absolutely is no God, no possible way, you cannot change my mind, which is epistemic closure of being closed-minded, right? Or if theists say, well, God exists, nothing will have convinced me otherwise. What's the difference? I think most people are more in the middle and say, look, I believe there's a God or I believe there's not a God, but I'm not 100% positive, but I would, I'm convinced enough to say that I believe or don't believe or believe one way or another. I think that's most people. Don't you think? I mean, not many people are out there going, hey, God doesn't exist, and I'm 100% certain of it, and I know this, I'm claiming it as knowledge, and I can demonstrate this or whatever. Very few are like that because that's a very high burden to meet.
I'm in that weird space where I believe there are no gods.
I think most atheists do.
I've seen and the arguments I've heard, I believe there are 0 gods, or at least the ones we've been prefaced with all the religions we have on this planet. But I'm also an anti-theist based on the fact that it's pretty clear at this point that religion is a a very destructive force on this planet.
Yeah,
I would argue that.
That's anti-theism definitely would hold that position. Yes, but I tell you, Rez, over the years, I do think more and more atheists are actually recognizing that they actually hold the belief that gods don't exist, and that the whole merely not believing is just useless. And they've had more effect on theists when they say, "Hey, look, I believe God does not exist, and let me show you why," rather than, "Oh, I merely don't believe you. You haven't convinced me. I'm going to sit back and do actually nothing." In other words, the T-jump approach, right? People don't like T-jump's approach because T-jump doesn't do anything. He doesn't, and what he does assert is ridiculous, right? And he's, by the way, he's a hard atheist. He is a philosophical atheist, but he does promote these weird stipulative uses of atheism, especially like, "Oh, well, there's just no good reason to believe in God," right? I think that's his prime definition, Rez. There's no good reasons to believe in God. Is that correct? So
yeah, in my opinion, based off the arguments I've heard over the years, based on the evidence I've read, that like contradicts stuff like the Bible and whatnot. In my opinion, there are no gods, or at least the ones that have been prefaced.
So let me ask you that.
Religions on the planet.
Yeah, well, let's dive into that real quick, because I've always wanted to ask TJ up to this. Maybe somebody can for me. I don't even care if they even give me credit or not. Whatever. But you heard it here first. 2:26, 9:30 PST. I want to ask T-Jump if your stipulative usage of the term atheism that nobody else uses. I don't know. He keeps on saying the Four Horsemen use it. I don't recall them using it that way, but I mean, I've heard them say it, but I don't think that's their main stipulative definition for qualification for necessity and sufficiency. But let's assume that the belief that there are no good reasons to believe in God is both necessary and sufficient condition to be atheist. Okay? Work with me, Rez, here, because I haven't ran this argument before. I was thinking about the other day. So far, so good. If I say that, let's assume that T-Jump's argument is that atheism is the position that there's no good reason to believe in God, and that is both sufficient, necessary, and sufficient to constitute atheism. Okay? We good? Rez, work.
Yep.
Okay. So step 2 would be, I do not hold the position there are no good reasons to believe in God, right? And I do not believe that God exists, right? I am a non-believer. So if I'm a non-believer and I do not believe God exists, but I don't make the condition of the idea that there are no good reasons to believe in God, what position am I according to T-Jump? Because he adheres to the lack-theist definition of atheism too. So I don't believe in God.
Totally honest.
You don't know, right? Because I wouldn't know either. The answer to this.
I don't know because I'm not that smart, but I'm also not that familiar with T-Jump's reasonings. In the few videos I've seen him in, he's sort of embarrassed himself, and he's also not very clear. And he seems to contradict himself in the same sentence a lot.
Oh yeah.
So I don't totally understand where he's coming from.
I've heard him do it in the same exact sentence. Yeah, and then he'll be like, "You just got your head up your ass." Okay.
I don't even know what he identifies as atheist, agnostic.
He identifies as atheist. No, he's atheist. He has said before he believes there are no gods.
Okay, because it could go either way for me based on what I've seen from him.
No, he believes there are no gods. He's a philosophical atheist, but he also tries to change atheism to be just merely somebody who doesn't think there's any good reasons to believe in God, which makes no sense to me. Because like I said, I don't assert there are no good reasons to believe in God. So, and also makes he also says fideism is a form of atheism. Fideism, which is the belief God exists, that you're just not justified for it. You don't have any rational warrant to believe God exists, but you still believe God exists anyways. And he calls that atheism. How weird is that?
The reason I haven't seen that much from him is because I chose to not avail myself of watching all of his stuff because he was an idiot to me in the first few videos, so I didn't watch all of his stuff. But
I watch every so often, but it's just very difficult. I don't watch his own stuff. I watch when he's on. I think I have T-Jump blocked, but I you know my rule. I don't watch videos on channels of people that I block, but I'll watch them on other channels sometimes, or I'll watch reviews of some of their stuff. So I'll watch T-Jump on like Modern Day Debate, but I won't ever go to T-Jump's channel. I think I have one video off that I did critique off his channel, but that's only because it was dealing with some other thing. And I think it originally was on Modern Day Debate. I think he just mirrored it. So I don't think that counts, does it?
The idea of a God existing isn't even the most important question to me, because if God parted the sky above me, poked his massive head through the sky and looked down upon me, and we could eliminate mass hallucination, like make sure everybody else around me is also seeing it, eliminate mass hallucination problems and anything else that we could inductively reason away the idea that this is any kind of illusion, then I would have to accept that God exists. But however, that doesn't get me to why is God then worthy of my
I agree
devotion?
with you. No, I totally agree with you. And by the way, even if it was illusion,
that God exists or not isn't even the main problem for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in some regards, right? I mean, even if it was an illusion, though, you're still justified to believe sometimes. So, I mean, just because, if all the stars in heaven spelled out Allah, and say, I am the great I am, and you see the trumpets and you see a clothed man coming from the sky claiming to be Jesus. Yeah, I mean, I think most people would be completely justified to believe that's the case. But somebody will say, what about us aliens? So what? That doesn't mean you're not justified to believe. It just means you're wrong. People can be wrong about beliefs, but the question is, are you justified? But like you're saying, even if God does exist, grant that okay, let's assume God exists. Why should I worship him? That's your argument.
Exactly, that's my problem.
Yeah. No, I mean, the counter would be because, if he does exist and you don't worship him, what kind of moral, I mean, you're fighting a unwinnable moral war. I mean, because he has all the cards. If he's going to condemn you and send you to an eternity of hell, what have you profited from that? What moral, ethical things have you done to help anybody? Because nobody gives a shit. Nobody's going to look at you and go, oh, Rez did the right thing eternity from now, and you're still suffering for eternity, right? It's an unwinnable moral war in that case. This is what happens when we see things in atrocities, when we have militant leaders that are committing all kinds of atrocities. I'm trying not to do good ones, Law, but people will fall lockstep into that because they're scared, and they have all the cards.
I can argue that when I was in Bosnia back in the 90s when the Holy War was still going on, and I can argue people are locked up because they're scared. There's some people who just sick and enjoy doing stuff like that too.
Yeah, because we've seen atrocities. Johnny Miller says, okay, so my justification, burden of proof for being an atheist is the arguments put forth by theists I've debated have not been rationally convincing enough to cause me to change my worldview. That's not a justification, Johnny. You're basically just saying I don't believe because I'm not convinced, which is it's almost like a tautology. When you give a justification, it needs to be something based upon inductive reasoning or giving information that's not established, that cannot be given strictly by deduction. If I say I don't believe, I can deduce I have not been convinced. If I can deduce I can be not be convinced, it is axiomatic that nobody has convinced me, right? It's self-evident. That doesn't explain anything. So that's not a sound justification. No, that is vacuous. A justification is not, well, I don't believe because you haven't convinced me. It's clear that you haven't convinced me if I don't believe. There's nothing justificatory about that. It's self-evident. But if I say you didn't convince me, I don't believe because I caught you in numerous lies and I also have evidence to show that what you put forth is wrong, that's a justification. Like, for example, I'll go to my favorite go-to. 0.99 equals repeating. And the reason I always go to this is because it is an objective fact. It is something that most people, or many people who don't understand math, don't understand that. And they'll argue with it, even though they're wrong, because it's an objective fact that cannot be wrong. So when you say, well, Steve hasn't convinced me that 0.99 repeating equals 1, that's not a justification. I need to know why I haven't convinced you of that, because it is a fact. That is the case that 0.99 equals 1. I want to like to know why you think it's not the case.
In fact, that has to be the case because the infinitum of 0.999 repeating has to equal 1 because that's the only way you can get from one number to another.
Yeah, well, yeah, the limit of a sequence is defined to be the number that the sequence converges upon. Same thing with the limit of a series, right? So if a series is convergent upon a particular real number, then the limit of that series is defined to be that number. So the series or the sequence 0.9, 0.99, 0.999, 0.9999, that limit to that sequence is defined to be the number 1 by a definition.
in decimal. Like in hex, it would be 0.A.
It wouldn't matter. When you're dealing with different bases and different indexicals, all you're doing is just changing the symbology. Like, for example, if I say 1 + 1 = 2 for the reals, and I say 1 + 1 = 10 for binary, I'm saying the same thing. The 10 binary represents 2. They represent the same position on the real number line. They're just a different signifier. They're just a different symbol to represent the exact same thing. So 1 + 1 = 10 is actually 1, 0, by the way. But if I say 1 + 1 = 1, 0, that's another way of saying 1 + 1 = 2. These are just different symbols on that nut to represent a actual place on the number line. So, but yeah, I use that an awful lot because anybody that wants to learn something to understand what objective is, they can objectively go look at the evidence and see 0.99 = 1. It's not subjective. It's not because I think it's the case. It's not because Rez says it's the case. It is something that even if both of us didn't exist, an individual can go check that out. This is why we have things like arguments of objective morality versus subjective morality. Objective morality is something that people can go look at or discover on their own. May not have to be empirical or to be evidential, but there are things that people can actually discover on their own without anybody else's help to say that there are some moral facts that are objective.
Okay, I have a question in regards to using judgment to believe in that a God exists. Like even in Rez's example of a God like poking his head out of the clouds, when it comes to God and his or her, when it comes to the qualities that a God has, is there any quality a God has that a mortal could even witness? Like, what judgments can we use to claim that it's even a God, even if it does everything that Rez said it did?
I think that'd be on your own individuality, what you consider to be a God. You know, I have my own uses of the term, right? I think God is, to me, again, this is stipulative, and I fully admit that. But God would be some being that can prescriptively change the laws of the universe. A creator being that can prescriptively change the laws of the universe.
When one extra dimensional object passes through a lower dimension, doesn't it assume the form of the dimension below it?
Well, a three-dimensional sphere would be a two-dimensional circle, right? Flatland.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So technically, like an extra dimensional being above our third dimension would essentially be a god to us in terms of.
I don't know about that. I mean, again,
in terms of just existence, because they would exist in a higher reality.
Yeah, but I mean that higher reality still exists in our overall universe, and the overall universe is
no. But I'm just saying, like, if they were to somehow cross into our three-dimensional space, they would become a three-dimensional object, would they not? Or I
don't know what you're asking.
So
all dimensions. Let's assume there's 12 dimensions, right?
Sorry, go on.
Let's say there's 10, 11, or 12 dimensions, whatever your version of string theory is. Those exist in our universe, right? So a being from another dimension still comes from the same universe that somebody like Darwin's Deity would say, well, that God creator, he created all of the universe. He created everything, including those other dimensions. Although I don't think he would believe that aliens exist from other dimensions, though.
Right, so if there's 12 dimensions, then he would be like a 13th dimensional being or some shit.
Well, again, I think that according to string theory, they're all compactified. The highest they can go is 12, isn't it? Am I mistaken?
No, I think you're correct.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it necessitate if he created all the dimensions, he would have to be a dimension higher? If we're going with this,
no, because I don't think it would have to do with dimensionality. I think this would. I mean, the concept that Christians or theists mostly posit is called and a lot of it is similar to what's called theistic personalism. And theistic personalism is the position where God exists outside of the universe, but acts as a great demerge, or somebody who sustains the universe, rather than classical theism, where God is inside of the universe itself. Right? God exists in a set of all things. So the set of all things, which is the universal set, God is contained upon. But the more the theistic personalism approach is that God exists somehow outside space-time, outside of everything that ever existed, and just kind of sustains us somehow. That doesn't make sense to me, don't get me wrong, but that would be the approach. Because I don't know what would... And I asked this question to Dr. Swearink the other day when Dr. Swearink was debating Skydive Phil. And I happen to like Dr. Swearick. I have his book. I'm going to have him autograph it next month, I think, or so. But because I get to hang out with him, cool, because I do stuff with RTB now. But Dr. Swearick, I asked him, if God exists, it's outside of spatial temporal isolation of some sort, right? Outside of the multiverse. What would that mean to actually exist then? What does that term existence actually entail to say that something exists outside of what we consider to be existence? That's a concept that I don't have a way of wrapping my head around. Either you exist or you don't exist, right? I mean, that is classical logic. So God exists or he doesn't exist. If God does exist, that kind of means he has locality in some ways. To exist means that you have some kind of locality or position or property that exists, ontologically speaking. So if God exists and he's not in the universe, right? He's not some kind of pandeist thing where a deity created the universe or became the universe, or created the universe and walked away and went go journey throughout the stars. What does it mean for God to exist outside of the actual universe with that term existence? I can't get an answer for that. I mean, if somebody wants to try, please.
Well, if there is a multiverse, let's assume there would have to be something connecting all the universes together, wouldn't it?
Well, I believe that a level 1 multiverse exists. That's Hubble's volume. I do think that's just kind of a self-evident that there's a level 1 multiverse. But if you start talking about the second level multiverse, where you have individual spatial temporally locked universes that have no relationship to each other, what happens in one cannot affect another. However, there are some theories what's called dark flow, which we can see the effects of the universe next to ours. But anything that happens in the universe itself is causally isolated from our universe. Then I don't think there's any kind of interconnectivity. They have to be spatial temporarily locked from each other. But God would be outside of all of them. God would be somebody who created all these multiverses. And I asked that same question to Swearick as well. If God created second level, third level multiverses, especially second level, where you have these universes that we can never get to, humans cannot go there. We are forever forbidden to travel to these other universes. Why did he waste time making them actually have ontology? I mean, it's just a waste. It just seems like a waste of energy, even though God's infinite. But why bother? God could have just told us these other things exist, and he didn't have to tell the truth. He could just, say, well, they exist, but they don't really exist because you can't go there. Why do you actually?
I mean, the Bible was also written for goat herders, but
Well, but that question also raises other things. If we're positing that God does exist and he exists outside of space-time as we know it. So does that mean if God exists and we do have a soul, does our soul travel beyond space-time to join God?
Yeah, I don't know. It would be the same question, where's heaven and hell kind of thing, right?
I would like to say something about that,
sure,
if possible. Yeah, I think basically that God is the host of all things. That's how he's defined. So, it's not that he exists in something. It's more that everything exists within him while he's still separated from the existence,
Okay, that's kind of like monistic idealism, though. I mean, are you positing that we're in the mind of God?
No. I think inspiring philosophy does that kind of thing. I believe there's a clear distinction between God and his creation.
Okay, so when I say that I exist, I have a physical locality, right?
Right.
Physical presence. When you say God exists, what does that mean?
Yeah, right. So it might sound a little bit weird, but basically truth is almost something that comes from God, while God is the true. It's like he's not part of truth. Truth is part of him. It's he is, because if you think about what it means to exist, it means pretty much to be part of reality.
Right.
It's to be true, I guess, right? And the idea with God is that nothing exists outside of him. So he is not only the ultimate truth, but he is the true with a capital T almost.
But that doesn't tell us if he's okay. So does God exist in the universe?
Well, he's above the universe, so he's not subject to it. It's like if you imagine like different categories, the universe would not be a super category of God. It would be a subcategory without necessarily being God either.
Okay, so
maybe you need
hang on one second.
categorization or.
Well, the issue I have with that is if you're talking about a category, then the universe,
something else.
The universe,
yeah.
The universe is the set of all things. When I say the universal set, that is a set that contains all things that exist, right? And you're saying God does not exist in that set?
Well, no, I'm saying that the universe exists within God without being God. It's like, because that's how he's defined in the Bible. He's defined as the host of all things. That's how Jews see him. So we can say he's everywhere and he's nowhere at the same time. But he's not subject to the universe. But he's like the universe doesn't comport all things. In fact, that's a definition that you have for the universe, but I wouldn't say it's. I wouldn't say everyone has this definition.
See, this gets kind of into Russell's paradox. Are you familiar with that?
Nope.
Russell's paradox is basically the Barber paradox. It's basically, in a nutshell, does a set of all things contain itself? Right. So if you have a set that exists, a set that contains all things, does it contain itself? If God is the set of all things, or the universe is the set of all things, does God fit into that universe? Is God
right?
Is that kind of what you're positing?
But here's the thing: is that why would the universe be the set of all things and not God?
Because the universe is the set of all things that exist. So if God exists, he has to be in that set.
Well, but then again, I think that's an arbitrary definition, because if you have people who define that all things exist within God, and there's other people like you, for example, who say that it's the reality that that comports all things, it's almost like a clash of worlds. Like we don't agree of what contains all things.
Yeah, I don't know what it means to be contained in God. I mean, to me, like you said, exist means to have something to do with reality, right?
It would mean that basically he's the one who grants you all the aspects and attributes that you can exist through, if you want. Like he's the one who brings temporality, spatiality, all the aspects that can qualify existence.
Raz, do you want to jump in there?
I just wanted to say, like, how does something host something else and staying separate from it at the same time? A parasite needs a host to live. They can't separate from it. So maybe we just need better terminology for this, but how does one host something and separate from it?
Right. Well, I mean, just like the parasite, you don't equate the parasite to the host.
This kind of sounds like really just convenient wording to not really actually to have an explanation about what you're talking about.
Well,
right, that's what I'm getting at.
Well, it's more like, it's kind of like, just imagine instead of a creator and a creation, just imagine an inventor and an invention. Is the inventor the invention? No, he's not. I mean, but like the invention depends not only on the law of nature, but it also depends on the inventor's what he made.
By the way, off topic real quick, I just got an email from Dr. Lachelt, who just got a paper approved in Perspective of Science and Christian Faith Journal on the rate project and helium diffusion rates. And in his acknowledgments, he thanks me. Wow. He sent me a advance copy of the paper.
Congrats.
Wow. Congratulations, Steve.
I've been mentioned in the Journal of Creation by Dr. Humphreys and the editor, but I was, I guess, more of a, I think he called me a flat Earth, a young Earth critic or something. I don't remember. But he was actually, a legit scientist, crediting me for the support and encouragement on this work. I'm just kind of blown away.
Oh, well, we can call you a YEC as well now.
Yeah, that's two papers I've been mentioning, and yet I have no influence on anybody, right? I'm just a somebody on the internet that grifts people and am a rape apologist.
It begs people to be on the show. Right?
Yeah, it begs people like Darwin's Deity to be on. This is what I'm saying. It's like I've been around a very long time. I have a pretty large following of people because I've been somebody who actually talks about the topics and loves this kind of stuff. And I want to help people. And so me helping Dr. Lachelle on accelerated nuclear decay, even though, he thought not on the theory, but just in the encouragement to do this because I thought Dr. Humphreys was full of crap. And we showed Dr. Humphreys was full of crap. It's humbling. And then, I just had a thing written about me in Bios Logos with Wayne Fillmore. Wayne Fillmore wrote a blog on Biologos and thanked me and Robert Rowe, a.k.a. General Han Solo, right? I mean, I just get humbled when I hear that these people thank me for me helping them, because that's all I wanted to do on this channel. That's all I've wanted to do since I've been on YouTube, is help people. I stand up for the underdog. I help people that have no voice, and all I ever do is get shit on by people who don't like that. They want to tear people down, but while they're tearing people down, I'm being recognized for helping to build people up, and they're never going to take that away from me. So I want to thank the people that have been listening to this channel and my main channel and supporting on the Non Sequitur show. You guys mean a lot, and you guys have seen through the bullshit of these people trying to mischaracterize people and take things out of context and basically lie about people only to character assassinate them because they don't like what's being talked about. I mean, the whole thing with me and atheism and agnosticism. I mean, people lied about me for many years and still continue to because they don't like what the logic and the reason and the academics have to say about the topic. So,
I mean, those people really don't matter, Steve. So.
No, I know they don't, but it's a shame every so often. You get certain people you think are friends and they just stab you in the back. But you know what? It's built up my other friendships even stronger, right? I mean, because I love the people that I associate with now. I mean, look at Bull, look at Chesh and Reds and Nick Suter. I mean, these are some of the greatest people I've ever met in my life.
What about Sweet?
Yeah. And and by the way, I know I have removed mods, but people that have been like around for forever. Raleigh S and it was just a Colorado Biker Prepper who's, by the way, met me. Colorado Biker Prepper has been to my house twice. I mean, we've gone out together for lunch and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a real person. I'm not the person that these trolls try to make me out to be, and all they do is 24/7 try to troll me. It doesn't matter where they troll me. I stopped talking about a lot of things because how it affected my friends, not how because it was affecting me. And out of respect for the people I cared about, because they were getting death threats and they were getting people messaging them the most horrific things and trying to stigmatize me and them, they didn't want to have anything to do with these toxic people. So, but I'm glad most people. Well, I should say most people saw through it, but a lot of people saw through their crap. So, but anyways, I just wanted to point that out. I'm really thrilled. I have that paper in front of me, and it's just, it's mind-boggling, that I was mentioning.
Well, can I make a comment about the inventor and the invention?
Sure. Yeah, go back on topic.
I just wanted to say that no, actually, you cannot separate the inventor from the invention. The invention is part of the inventor. Without the inventor, the invention doesn't happen. And it comes from their own mind. And often,
right,
when you hear examples, when you hear from these inventors about how they came up with the invention, it's often a moment of serendipity. It's got everything to do with who they are. You can't separate the inventor from the invention, because the invention.
I agree with that. I think it goes right into the idea of God, that the reason why sometimes I've seen moral arguments saying that God was arbitrary and things like that. That's exactly the argument I'm using to counter this, is that the creation of God is kind of similar to him. It's based on a principle of truth, of justice and goodness. So there is a similarity. You're absolutely right, but there's still a difference. I mean, the invention, the car, is not the dude who made the car. Like, he's not a car. Like that's obvious.
Well, I mean, like, once upon a time, lightning was an invention by Zeus. And then as science progressed, we learned about that kind of stuff. And we learned that people, like, we have DNA and we have ancestry.
Right.
It's like the more science progresses, the more we find that our quote unquote inventors are natural and not supernatural. So, I mean, I'm under the assumption. I know it's an assumption, but I'm under the assumption that there eventually everything will be explained by science, like everything, even philosophy somehow. Because every time we say something can't be explained by science, we get proven wrong. So that's my view on everything. But I think eventually
that's assuming a lot, though.
Yeah, and who says that science will go against the idea of God? Who says it won't confirm it?
Well, no, I just science can neither confirm nor confirm God. It's not the tool to do so. Philosophy is, and so science needs to leave the concept completely out of the equation.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe science could, but let's say it could. Why would it necessarily go against the idea of God?
Well, again, it doesn't help the existence of God either way. I mean, like, granted, I think there's an argument to be said, hey, we've attributed certain things to naturalistic gods, and as we have learned more of those gods have become less and less explanatory of why we see a certain phenomenon, right? And science has outright said, hey, we want to see, we see a naturalistic phenomenon. We want to have a naturalistic explanation for it. We see lightning. We explain it using electrostatics rather than, a deity. I think that's a perfectly reasonable argument for that. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I use that myself. Things have been explained through naturalistic means more than any kind of supernaturalistic means. Okay. But science is not there to determine whether God exists or not. What science is there to do is explain and predict. That's pretty much it. And so no science should ever come around and say, look, because of science, gods don't exist. I think that's outside of their purview, and to do so is a huge category error.
Well, I have a question about that. Like, let's say that far in the future, like year 1 billion, every entire like even small charge of energy in all dimensions is accounted for, and they can trace everything all the way back to like all the way back to the Big Bang, and nowhere at all is there like any possibility that a god intervened ever.
Right, that wouldn't be science still. I mean, I would agree. I agree with you in philosophy. That would be a great case against God, and I've actually ran a similar argument. But that'd be philosophical because you're dealing with existence.
It would have to go beyond the Big Bang. It would have to speak about the laws that brought the Big Bang, because that the laws are what's really in question. It's not even the matter. It's which kind of law brought that matter into existence, or was it always there? I mean, one or the other. Either way.
What do you mean? I mean, the law. I had this discussion not too long about the law. The difference between the law and the reference that it refers to. Law is like a law of identity, is a description of what we see about the universe.
Yeah, no, not these laws. I'm talking about, like these kind of like people like Lawrence Krauss and others, not just him, obviously, but who talked about a universe from nothing, and how it's actually laws that bring this universe into, when there's nothing, and then because of laws they bring the matter, the energy, and everything.
Yeah, but these laws are descriptive, not prescriptive, which is another thing Darwin's Deity doesn't seem to understand. There doesn't have to be a prescriptive giver to these laws.
Yeah,
they're just what we observe.
Right. Well, that thing which we observe is whatever it is that brings forth matter. Like that's the thing that we would need to discuss, not just because the Big Bang is when the matter kind of, if I'm correct, I could be wrong, but I think it's the clash of matter. No,
the Big Bang described is the expansion of the universe. It has no explanatory thing of where the energy or the matter came from. We just know from looking at the background radiation that there was a singularity. And then, go ahead.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like the Big Bang is not where the matter comes from. It's when the matter clashes and just like that's why it's called the Big.
Well, no. It was called the Big Bang to misnomer it, to belittle it, and it just stuck. We're talking about the expansion of the universe. There's no clash of anything. There was no explosion.
The Big Bang literally is just the theory that explains the expansion of the universe. and the current state of the universe. There's no explosion. There was nothing. There's no bang. It's just an expansionary model.
Okay, well, so we would still have to go beyond that. We'd have to speak about what brings forth like this matter and the functioning of that.
Exist before the Big Bang.
Yeah, because you're dealing with concepts that are outside the purview of the discussion. I mean, to say that our universe there was nothing before the Big Bang, it's a nonsensical question.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are people who try to explain that, like the example I gave of Lawrence Krauss, who speaks about a universe from nothing. He tries to explain why these phenomenon happened.
Yeah, but first of all, he's talking about a typical thing. I've talked to Dr. Krauss on this particular topic, on the no boundary proposal, and by the way, it was really cool because how often do I get to talk about that with an actual physicist? But yeah, the something from nothing is not a philosophical nothing. It is a scientific nothing. And scientific nothing could be different meanings. You could say nothing could be something where there's no matter. You can say something where nothing is where there's no matter or fields, or you can say nothing is where there's no matters, fields, or even gravity, or even what's called quantum foam, or these quantum bubbles, or instabilities, or what's called metastable false vacuum. He, in his book, is talking about a nothing that where there is a metaphysical false vacuum. That's the nothing he's referring to. So there is something to be said of what exists as far as quantum fluctuations, right? He's not talking about philosophical nothing.
No, I know he's not talking about philosophical nothing. I mean, but that's the thing. This quantum vacuum or whatever, this quantum mechanic or laws that he's trying to speak about, this thing, I think that, we have to wonder, like, are these contingent? Do they come from something, or are they non-contingent? I think that's a big reason.
Well, let's say assume that just say these things are contingent things. They could either come from something that's contingent or from metaphysical necessity. Then the deity is positing a metaphysical necessity. And I don't know if it makes sense to say that laws are contingent. Things that are contingent, right? I mean, are you saying that these things, why do they exist? What's the cause of them? Then,
but also, why do they function the way that they function? If you want to say that laws are descriptive, well, they're describing the functioning of things. So why do things function?
Yeah, that's an unanswerable question. I think the way I look at it, I just
really
take it
don't
as
think
a fact.
Discover the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's a hard question, and there is no simple answer to it because there may not be an answer.
But you keep asking that question, but then you can also go into quantum mechanics, because there's particles that seem to pop in and out of existence in quantum mechanics. I cannot think of the name of them right now, but they could be a function of that. There's several hypotheses out there for that.
Is this a miswording of terms, though? I mean, does gravity function, or does it do something else?
Well, I think it's. I mean, I'm going to steal man a little bit. I think he's asking, since gravity exists, right? Why is there gravity? What makes gravity something that has ontology to begin with, right? But you can ask that about any question. I mean, about why there's something from nothing, why, or something other than nothing,
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't know. I take it as a proof.
Not exactly.
That's well, you don't have to posit a God to get you there, right? I mean, God doesn't have to be the reasons why there's something from that exists other than nothing. It's just you're positing it. I posit a brute fact. Either one is just as likely as the other, I think. Or
yeah, but this is not really where I bring God in the equation. It's more about the question of contingency and non-contingency. I mean, because I believe that at some point you need something that has to be non-contingent. Otherwise, I mean, everything
you don't.
Basically depends on something.
Right, that's perfectly fine. That's called a brute fact. You can have a contingent causal relationship that ends up with just a brute fact, which is contingency from contingency. Or you could actually have just an infinite regress, which obviously sucks, but there's nothing illogical about it.
What, infinite regress? You cut out, sorry.
Yeah, the three things that you really can kind of end up with are an infinite regress of causal change,
coherentism, and the option of God. But I think that the infinite regress, because the problem when you have some things that are always contingent, like an infinite regress, I think is just, I'm not sure how to word it. Like, I'm trying to think about it so I don't just say nonsense, but.
No, I mean, I do understand what you're saying.
I think that at some point, if you have only contingent things, they depend on something even to exist. So at some point, you get to the origin of all origins, and if you don't have an ultimate origin, then it's kind of the idea of how things, and I know you'll probably disagree with that, but how things, if there's nothing that justifies nothing that does nothing, it's not going to bring forth something.
Why?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Because,
why do you assume that nothing can't bring forth something? There's nothing logical about that. You could say,
right.
We have, if we posit nothing is possible, there is nothing logical to say something can't come from nothing. Because there's nothing to prevent something from coming from nothing. There's nothing to either actualize it or.
Yeah.
So when somebody says something can't come from nothing, I think that's a really failed.
That's Ozymandias. I've seen that. Yeah,
Ozzy's right.
I mean, well, I posted on this, and I could be wrong. I don't know, but I think that by definition, I mean, if there are no things that do no things, it's not going to do anything. I mean, if it's like that would be a contradiction. And also I think that if nothing is impossible, but also nothing is possible, it just leads to the status quo.
What do you mean? What leads to the status? Again, if you have nothing, who knows what the hell can or cannot exist out of it? Yeah.
I mean, if nothing does nothing, then by definition, it's gonna do nothing.
Well, no.
Because there are no things to do no thing.
No. By definition, that's not true. Nothing. If we have nothing, we cannot say anything about it because we have no idea. The entire universe can come out of absolute nothing. We have no idea whether that's possible or not possible.
But there would have to be something to make this come forth, no?
No, because we don't know the properties of nothing, right? We don't. Well, the concept of nothing is so foreign to us. No, that's not by definition. That's you watched Ozzy's video. You need to go watch it again. It's not by definition. It's not. Nothing is so foreign to us, so there's nothing to prevent anything from coming out of it. So the only answer we have to can something coming from absolute nothing is who the hell knows.
So how would you define nothing?
The absence of everything.
Okay, so there's not a single thing. So there's not a single properties either.
Right. There's not a property to keep something from coming from nothing or to actualize something out of. There's no potentiality. There's no actuality. There's straight up nothing. So there's nothing logically saying something can't come from nothing.
Yeah, there's no properties.
Right.
That at all. So so if something was to come from nothing,
by saying something can't come from nothing, you're giving it a property. You're saying something about nothing prevents something from happening, and you cannot say that. That's and then you start getting into verification fallacies.
Well, if you say that something can come from nothing, then you're also giving it a property. No,
I didn't say that.
Okay, but
what I said was specifically the only proper answer I could see to that question is we have no idea.
Well, I mean, Zealot, you're saying you're trying to say. I mean, this is what you're trying to say. You're trying to talk about a non-something creating nothing, and that is actually something. If you give it the property that it can't create something, that's not nothing. That's something that can't create something.
Yeah, because we don't know what the properties are, if it has any or nothing. It's so unimaginative beyond our ability to apprehend.
If we're saying that nothing has properties, then we're no longer talking about nothing.
You're saying
that. We're not saying that.
I'm saying if we're saying that.
Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't say that.
None of us here said that at all.
I'm not saying that anyone said it. I'm saying that. I'm saying if nothing has properties, then it's no longer nothing. We're no longer talking about nothing. That's me who's saying that. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So see, me and Jack are saying that.
I got you.
No, I'm not saying that. I'll make sure that it's clear. I'm just clarifying that you are correct. That's what they were also saying.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But even if we could confirm that nothing has no properties, we
But
also
that's the
can't
thing.
confirm
No.
that something can't come from it. So there's no point in that.
Yeah, that's
argument.
what I'm saying. The only real answer to that question, can something come from nothing, is I have no idea. I'm agnostic on it.
We could because, like I said, by definition, is if there is nothing that does nothing, then how could something come out of nothing
because
that does
nothing
nothing?
is preventing it. It has no property to prevent something from coming out of it.
And it's not allowing it either.
Exactly. That's why we're agnostic on it. Exactly. We don't know.
Exactly.
We have no. We
So
wouldn't
it
even know where
stays
to begin.
nothing.
Well, no. That now you're making it. Now you're not agnostic.
But even the idea of
I'm not
this
agnostic
is,
on that.
Yeah,
But we can't even theoretically test this because all of our existence is predicated on something existing, that being the universe in which we exist. We can't even conceive of nothing.
I think we're talking about two different nothings. There's a philosophical nothing and a nothing that would actually exist.
We all
and
know.
We're not talking about. Okay,
well,
sure.
Nothing that stays nothing is something that is staying. It's doing something. It can't be a nothing anymore.
Yeah, I think it's just. I think it's missing the point.
Well, it's just a way. It's just a way to describe it. You know, it's just a way to say that nothing does nothing. I'm not saying that it's actually acting.
Yeah, but do you hold that nothing? Do you hold that something can't come from nothing?
I don't think that something can come from nothing.
Okay, that requires justification, and your justification is not sound here, because you're saying because it's nothing, there's properties existing in there that prevent something from happening, and we don't know that.
No, I'm not. No, that's the thing. I'm not saying that there are properties that prevent it. I'm saying there's no properties at all.
But you're saying if something can't come from nothing, you're giving it a property. You're giving it the property.
No.
Am I confused here? Because anybody else not see him doing this?
No,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that
you don't recognize that you're saying it.
Sure, okay, but why? That's the thing. I'm speaking about something. Something needs something to exist. If there is nothing, it's the opposite of something or of everything.
What we're saying is you cannot know that because we can't even conceive of a philosophical nothing. It would have no properties. It is so alien to our existence that we cannot say that something can't come from nothing. You can't say that. You can't do it because it's so alien to us. There would be no way to verify this philosophically or theoretically. It's just not possible. So going down this route is just a waste of time.
Yeah.
I agree with Raz.
Yeah, Raz every so often makes sense, right? No, I'm kidding.
Also, can I just make a minor correction? Zealot earlier said that was getting the Big Bang confused with matter clashing together. There was no matter for the first 370,000 years of the universe. It was just heat and energy. That was it. Because the universe was so hot, nothing could form.
The plasma state that you're talking about.
Yeah, it was a plasmic state. There was no matter.
Right. Well, I mean that.
Well, plasma is a stage of matter.
Well, it was an aphomous blob. We'll say that.
So you would. I mean, I just think it's pretty easy to define nothing. If honestly, it's just maybe real nothingness is a bit maybe harder to conceive, but philosophical nothingness is just nothing. I mean, I
think it's extremely difficult to conceive philosophically.
When you're saying that something can come out of nothing, you're basically saying that. No. Okay, but let's just say that people were to say that something could come from nothing. Then let's just say that. Mm-hmm. Well, then it would give an action to nothingness.
But you're doing the same thing in a reverse, though. You're doing the same exact thing. You're saying things can't come from nothing. That is the same. Yeah, right. It's the same thing. You're making an argument.
Right.
It's the exact
same thing.
So
if you argue something can't, listen. If you argue something can't come from nothing, you're doing the same thing. Somebody's arguing something can't come from nothing. You're just taking the opposite viewpoint. You're taking the contrary of it, or the contradiction of it. Well, I would say technically it would be the contradictory of it. That's what it would be. You're saying that it's true. You're saying that it's false. So if the proposition is something can come from nothing, that, and you say that is true, you're arguing people shouldn't do that. But you're arguing that proposition is false, which is a contradictory position. You're saying that that proposition is false. You're assigning the same property, only in the negation.
But the thing is, I'm not saying that it's not the nothing that prevents the something. It's the something that has no foundation in nothingness. Is the something that has no foundation to come from nothingness.
Okay. Let me restate this one more time. In order to prevent something from nothing,
I'm not saying prevent. I'm not saying. Didn't say prevent.
Let me just finish. In order to prevent something from nothing, the nothing must have a property. Therefore, the nothing is not nothing; it's something.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But I'm not saying it prevents.
If there is a nothing...
I'm saying something doesn't have a foundation to come from nothing because there's nothing. I'm not saying nothing...
Wait! If there is a philosophical nothing, that nothing is nothing. There is no something, there is nothing. At all. No properties, nothing. That does not necessarily prevent something coming from that nothing.
But does it allow it?
It doesn't matter because
it does allow it. Yeah, it does allow it.
Okay, so it doesn't prevent, but it allows. That what you guys are saying?
We don't know which one it even.
Jack just said that.
If there's nothing to prevent it, that necessarily means it is allowed.
So nothing allows something, but it doesn't prevent it. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Right?
What we're saying
right.
is
that
is therefore
no, that's great. So if there's nothing that allows it or that prevents it, then it's just the status quo. That's what. It just stays nothing.
You're still you can't. If you're saying he's not understanding what you're saying here. There's nothing.
Let me try it.
Yeah, go ahead. Be my guest.
All right. Let me ask you a few questions so we can clarify the definition of nothing. Does nothing have a foundation?
Well, nothing is nothing.
Does it? So it does not have a foundation?
I mean, unless you're asking me about my definition, but otherwise it has no foundation. It has nothing.
All right. It can't not have a foundation.
I can define it if that's what you want to know.
Nothing, regardless of how you define it, if it doesn't have a foundation, that means it's something lacking a foundation, and it can't possibly be nothing, regardless of how you define it.
No, it's not something that lacks foundation. It's nothing.
So, does it lack foundation?
It has nothing. There's nothing.
I mean, that's the most coherent thing you've said about nothing so far.
Okay, so no, sure, but you're okay. So can something come from nothing? If nothing allows it or prevents it,
we don't know.
Then it just stays nothing, right?
No,
the answer is no.
No. Now you're not. You see what you're smuggling in. You're saying it's a status quo, which means that something can't come from nothing, and which is you're positing. You're positing something cannot come from nothing.
Something can only come from something.
And how do you? Now you're giving it a property.
Right
you're saying, you're saying.
No, I said I didn't give a property to nothing. I said something can only come from something.
Why?
I didn't speak about nothing.
Why?
Therefore, something cannot come from nothing.
Exactly.
Therefore, nothing has a property preventing something coming from nothing.
Yeah, he gets
That's
it.
what you just did.
No.
Yes.
Yes, you just did that.
If you say something can
no, I see what you're saying. I understand. Like you're saying that I'm giving nothing a property to prevent. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying nothing has no properties to explain anything.
Look,
that's what I'm
saying. Hold on. Are you suggesting the steady state theory or hypothesis where everything's always existed? There was never a time, or
no. I'm saying God always existed. Not everything, though. Not the creation of the universe. I'm saying God always existed.
The universe always existed. There you go. That's a fix.
No, sure. I mean but that becomes a different question to justify it. We're just speaking about nothingness. I'm not saying that from my idea of nothingness, I just prove God. I'm not saying that.
Well, you're trying to say that you have to have something to make something, and that's something that we can't know. You can't back that up. There's just no way.
Right.
I just tried saying that several different ways.
No, but then I would go through other justification route. I wouldn't just stay where we are right now.
No, there's just no way you can justify it at all, because you can't possibly prove that nothing.
Well, by definition, of course. I know you guys disagree, but
no, even you can't possibly be using the definition of nothing if you're giving it the property of being unable to create something.
Right.
No, I'm saying that something doesn't have a foundation in nothingness.
You're missing. You're just so confused here, I think. And I'm not trying to demean you. I'm not. It's just that you can't say something can only come from something and then disregard what that entails. If you say something cannot come from, or something must only come from something, you are by extension saying something cannot come from nothing, right? I mean, you agree with that, which means you're assigning a specific property about nothing that nothing can come from it.
Or is it a property about something? Because something needs a foundation, though, doesn't it? Does something have a foundation?
I don't know what you mean by
we don't know. That's the only real answer we have.
Right.
So you don't know if something has a foundation?
I don't know what you mean by that. If the proposition something can come from nothing, to me, I think the only honest intellectual response somebody should have to that is be agnostic on that proposition. Because we have no idea. We've never experimented on nothing. We don't even know what it would be like to have philosophical nothing. We can't assign properties to it, like the prevention of something coming from it or the actualization of something from it. We wouldn't have actualization. We wouldn't have potentiality. We have no idea what it would be like. But logically, there's no logical argument to be had to say something cannot come from nothing. Nothing does not entail that particular entailment there. Nothing.
But when you're speaking about, you're saying, we couldn't assign no properties, no ideas, no nothing. I mean, that's because that's exactly what nothing is. It has no property. It has no actualization. It has no.
You can't say something cannot come from nothing then, because you don't. You by doing so, you're giving it the property something can't come from nothing.
So for nothing to bring forth something, right? Is that what you're saying? For nothing to bring forth something, it just would no longer be nothing
at that point, right?
Exactly right. But so if nothing could bring forth something, it means that nothing has a certain action, if you want, or a certain capacity to do things. It's no longer nothing. It's no longer nothing.
Right. Once it brings forth something, it would be no longer nothing. But right. Sure. Okay. What's the problem with that?
But if nothing couldn't bring forth something, it would also stop being nothing.
Oh, it would just stay nothing.
No, because it would be something that can't bring forth something.
But it's not that it can or it can't. It's just that there's nothing.
Yeah, I think. Do you know what a reification fallacy is?
What is it?
Reification fallacy is when you start talking about an abstract concept as if it has concreteness. It's like, for example, if I say there's a hole in the ground and I start attributing properties to that hole, there is no properties to the actual hole. I mean, I could give it dimensionality, but I'm measuring, I'm measuring the road itself, right? I'm taking measurements of that. With a hole itself is missing something, right? It's a lack of something, right? But nothing itself, philosophical nothing, is absence of everything.
Well, lack of something. That's I mean, it could be a lack of something if you want. It just lacks everything. Instead of a lack of something, it's a lack of everything. That could be nothing.
So you don't think nothing can nothing exist to you?
Well, I don't believe it does. I don't believe that nothing exists.
Okay.
Because I believe that God always.
Okay, so God always existed.
Well, I mean,
why must God always exist?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I'm not trying to validate that God always existed from this link. I'm just, that's what you're asking me, my belief. That's my belief.
That's fine. But why must God always exist?
Right. Well, like I said, I mean, it goes back to the idea of contingency and nothingness. I mean, at some point, I believe there had to be something non-contingent. We can keep talking about that if you want, but I'm trying to make it short, And I believe that something truly non-contingent, whether it's from the inside or the outside, like there's no inner mechanism or principle that makes it work in a certain way, I think that the only thing would be that this non-contingent thing would need to have a will in order to do anything and not to stay still, out of movement, you know?
Okay, so but God is not a contingent being. You would posit.
No, he's non-contingent, but also has a will, a conscience, if you want, but a will, not just a conscience.
So
he's eternal.
So he has how am I put this? He has agency.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And let's just say, you know, that just to say this real quick, you know, let's just say that something that was contingent, you know, if you begin to exist, then your existence, I would say, depends upon its start, in a sense, you know, whatever started it, or even if there's nothing, but it depends upon its start. Your existence, if it starts, it couldn't act before it started. So
what was before the universe was created, what was God doing?
I don't know. That's a good question.
He just existed. Okay, so if God has agency, why did? Because you're trying to posit God as an explanation of things. So why did God create this possible world of all possible worlds? Why did He actualize this one?
Right. I mean, that's a good question. But that's not really how I try to argue God, to be completely honest. I mean, I think there's a few answers, you know, but that's really not like how I'm trying to justify God, like the reasons why he wanted to, you know.
Well, out of curiosity, if you know that he has agency and will and like a conscience, that means there would be some proof, like a reason why he would create this universe.
Well, I think that the proof is that his attributes are necessary in this processes, like in, you know, like, and I know we don't agree on the idea of nothingness, but like I said, I think that, you know, in order, you need to be non-contingent, because if you're contingent, well, you must come from something else. You cannot come from nothing.
Well, I think we all agree we're contingent beings. I don't know anybody who would argue otherwise.
Well, there are people who do that. There are people who say that not everything is contingent. I mean, that's one of the...
No. Humans,
right.
Humans. Of course, we're contingent.
Okay.
I don't see anybody arguing we're not contingent beings. That would make no sense.
Right. But I'm talking about the ultimate, like the origin of origins. You know, like the source of all sources. You know, this thing.
It could be a metaphysical necessity, sure. But my critique...
Is it contingent?
Well, my critique would be it could be a contingent fact. And if it isn't a contingent fact, if it's a metaphysical necessity, what posits God as that metaphysical necessity? I don't see how that follows. Because positing God doesn't explain anything.
Yeah, so I think that the idea here is that basically this thing, if we're trying to deduce the attributes that makes this thing not only like the only thing that's possibly like it is required. It is required that these attributes are present in the ultimate source of everything, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to deduce the attributes of God as being required for this existence. That's how I'm trying to justify it.
Yeah, no, okay, that's fine. But the attributes of God, again, I mean, what's the point of assuming? Are you assuming God exists, or are you concluding God exists? First of all,
sorry, what you cut a little.
Yeah, are you assuming God exists, or are you're presupposing God exists, or concluding God exists?
Right. No. I mean, when I'm doing this exercise, I'm concluding that he exists.
Okay, so you have to start by concluding that the universe has a metaphysical necessity over infinite regress or contingency, right?
Right. Yeah. No. There is a necessity in the sense that it's required.
But why are you choosing a metaphysical necessity over just a brute fact?
Well, like I said, I'm the reason why I get to this is because I believe that this thing, first of all, this thing has to be eternal. Whatever is the necessity has to be eternal, because it comes down to the argument of nothingness again. I think that by definition, but infinite regress, there has to be some kind of principle that is non-contingent in it.
Why?
Because if it is contingent, like if it's always contingent,
mm-hmm.
At some point, I think that that it doesn't overcome the idea of nothingness. It just.
But you're not having a justification against it. There's something called infinitism, which goes to various things like the problem of inferential doxastic justifications. But you have a justification for belief and a justification for that belief, about that belief, this infinite regress. And the universe is the same way. You can have an infinite regress. There's absolutely nothing illogical about an infinite regress, right? So you can't just say by fiat, oh, well, infinite regress because there has to be something of contingency. No, there's three horns to the argument from contingency. There is infinite regress, causal continuance of a causality of relationships to end in some kind of brute fact, which is contingent, or in a metaphysical necessity. The theist posits a metaphysical necessity, and they posit that to be a deity. Now, I reject infinite regress, and I inject brute fact as satisfied in PSR, which is one of the reasons why I don't accept PSR, because I think either one of them is just fine. But none of those things explain anything. Even accepting God as a metaphysical necessity doesn't get you anywhere. And yes, you can have an infinite regress. It's perfectly fine with that. You can't just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not logical.
I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. Because it's a complex question.
I know.
I might just fail tonight, but
hey, you're trying. Hey, I'll give you props. At least you're not DD.
Right.
Right? No, I like these kind of conversations. More power to you, man. I'm
already thought about these things, but I never wrote them down. I never put them down. So, it's like, especially in the flow of a conversation like that, it's complicated. I'll still try to give an answer. I think that contingent things, basically there's nothing really that justifies that they even have a state per se. Like in order to arrive to whatever state of reality, I think that I think it's like in order to arrive to a state of reality, you need some form of explanation that sends it this way, right? And before you have this explanation that gives the whole sense of the thing, you're gonna need to have something that invariably sends it this way, I think, because
Zealot, until you can answer the question that why did God actualize this world, then it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't answer anything. Positing a God gets you nowhere. Because I like to know if God exists, what was the reasoning why he actualized this world, including all evil in it, all the exact amount of evil in it, rather than any other possible world with one less evil in it? I like to know the answer to that question.
Right. Well, I mean, that's not the hardest question. If you're asking why God created this world the way he did, I mean, this world is a test. Okay, it's just, before there was the perfect world, before sin, because when we'll get to paradise, there won't be sins allowed, but also people in their heart, they will not sin by their own free will, if you want, right? Like, so this world is just basically to see if you can get to paradise.
That sounds like a soul building exercise, like a theodicy, like Wick's soul building exercise.
I'd also like to see you prove that free will exists, but
yeah, I don't think free will exists either.
No, I don't think I use that term as just trying to talk about the idea of action, but I'm not necessarily. I don't believe in free will either, like complete. But I mean, we have a certain freedom of action.
We have will. Yeah, we have will. I don't think we have free will.
Yeah. Not necessarily free will.
I don't think the indeterminate position holds too much water, which is.
Oh yeah, no.
Well, and the whole concept of this world is a test is saying that God made us flawed on purpose to pass a test that, that's almost impossible to pass. Because if God already knows, if God is omnipotent and omniscient, he already knows what we're going to do, then what's the point of the test?
Yeah, I don't get the whole test thing either, because I think free will is an illusion, and I do think that God could have done things quite differently if he wanted to test people. You had Satan rebelling, and Satan knew the truth. He had perfect knowledge, right? He knew God existed. There's no question that he knew that.
Well, that's if you believe in the Christian Satan,
right. Well, but okay, well, even angels. Still, angels knew that God exists. Some of them still rebelled, even in Jewish canon, correct?
I'm not sure.
The Nephilim?
Nephilim was the compliment. Was where the angels came to Earth and made children with Earth.
Yeah, but that was against God's decree, right? Angels in mythos have rebelled, right?
Yeah, well, they have disobeyed God.
Yeah.
That's what you.
Yes. Yeah, and they know, but they would know God exists, and so if angels, failed these types of things, why would God expect us to, as humans, to pass? They had perfect knowledge, and even they said, "Screw you."
Well, I think that it's just the idea. First of all, I'm not a Christian. I'm a Muslim, and so I don't necessarily believe that. First, to us, Satan is not an angel. He's a jinn.
Right,
it's not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, he's a jinn, and also but still, his name Abraham to God, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But like the idea here is basically that, like I say, we have a certain will, and we will willfully choose to obey God by realizing that, by just having these kind of virtue, if you want, and it's just a way for when we'll get back to paradise, we will do so because we have chose, and we will be purified too. But
can I ask an off-topic question of you real quick?
Yeah.
Zealot, is the story of Job in the Quran?
Yeah, there is a. What about it?
So in the Quran, the story of Job exists where God and the devil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever title you want to give them, are having a conversation. And
no, not this story. Not this story. But there is mention of him.
Of Job?
But this, yeah. Yeah, there's mention of a bunch of.
I just think that's kind of a mean deity to put a follower like that through hell like that. To me, it just seems weird that an omnibenevolent being will make a pact. And this, it's not the Muslim version, but in Job, God's talking to Satan, and Satan is like, "Hey, this is like your greatest follower. I bet he would even forsake you, given enough crap happening to them." In a nutshell, that's kind of like the story.
Right.
That's kind of a petty wager, isn't it?
To God, this existence is pretty meaningless, because then we'll have eternity. If you just think about it, like, and even here, like the time that we live here in the other world is like it's one day or something like that, And when you come to the other world, you have eternity. Like, so it's like it's one day in your life, and then you have infinite days.
So an infinite based upon your decisions, based upon so much misinformation given by many multiple people over thousands of years of confusion, doesn't seem like a very fair test.
Well, it's because it's not necessarily a rationality test. It's not like you're not gonna. No, but I'm saying that you're not gonna believe in God, right? Of course, but. You don't believe in God because you found the mathematical equation that says, "Oh, look, if you addition this and you divide that, it's going to prove that God exists." That's not the test. Like,
can I make an appeal to emotion?
Sure, there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, if it's done properly, it's called pathos.
I'm not usually good at this, but it's weird because I used to be like in the other seat and look at people like me now, who's I guess an agnostic or something, and I used to really want to save them, but now I'm having that same kind of feeling towards Zealot, but it's from the other way, and I think it's funny. I ever since I stopped believing, I have found that every day matters like so much, and I try to live my life as full as humanly possible because I'm not thinking that there's anything going to be coming up after this. This is all I've got. But if you're playing at this your entire life out like it's just some test for some, bonus stuff that you're going to get afterwards, what if you're wrong and you just waste everything that you have for your entire existence betting on something that's not there?
You wouldn't know the difference at that point, though. You'd be dead.
There's two things that I could answer to this. First of all, when we say it's a test, it's more like it's a way that you live and that you are, right? It's a way to be, and it's how you exist, and this existence is what allows you to enter paradise. It's not just a test; it's a way to be. Like it's, but also like, and I'm probably gonna sound crazy right now, but like even Dawkins speak about special revelation. I think that's an important aspect too. It's not, but I had what we call like true dreams in Islam, and there's actually book of interpretation of the symbols that's very precise, and I've had a bunch of those, and they happened, and it's really, really, it's convincing. And I know probably people will say it's my psyche or something, but
okay. So you were born Muslim, or you converted?
Yeah, I converted.
How long ago was that?
10 years.
10 years. Okay. And did you know a lot of Muslims?
Nope, I didn't know any Muslim personally.
Okay. And can I ask where you're from?
I'm from Montreal.
Montreal. So that's kind of not a Muslim capital, is it? I mean, that's not a lot of Muslims up there.
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean there's Muslims, but
yeah, but it's not like a heavy Muslim.
It's not London.
Yeah, it's not London or the Great Britain areas where they have a lot of Muslim influence. Okay. And were you looking into religions, and that was like one of the ones you looked into?
I was into politics and sociology, a lot of it, and yeah, I mean I saw some prophecies about the times to come and things like that, and I was just a little bit interested, and then I read the holy books, and I saw that, to me, like the life of Jesus, I said, I mean, he was the perfect dissident, if you want, or the perfect like life to live. But it's really about just reading and the things that I saw in my life that led me to this.
See, it's funny you say that. I'm the opposite, because you said earlier that something about finding an equation to find God or disprove God, and complete opposite. Like I said, back in the 90s, I was in the army. I went to Bosnia, and I watched 3 factions tear themselves over their belief of God, and it made me question my own beliefs. I was raised Pentecostal myself, and I went into a deep dive of religion. I looked into Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, all of them, Wicca. I looked, and in diving through all those religions, it made me come to the realization that no one knows what they're talking about when it comes to God.
Do you believe in God?
I have to kind of agree with him a little bit on that. I mean, I run the gamut too. I used to hang out with Wiccans. I've read, Buckley's Complete Guide to Witchcraft, and I've had the Greater Creative Gift of Solomon. I became Mormon. I've looked into different things too. I've read parts of Uranta. I tried reading Dianetics. By the way, don't.
but Jainism is fun to look into. You should look into Jainism sometime.
That's also in religious writings. These things about all the different sects and how the vast majority of them are misled. That's also in the writing.
Well, every religion has that in their writings. Every religion says, we are the right religion. Those guys are misled. They're misinformed.
No.
Oh, they're following false prophets.
I'm not even speaking about that. I'm like, literally, if you look at Islam, they're saying that within Islam, there will be, I think it's like 72 sects, and only one of them will be right in Islam.
Really?
Yeah.
I have a retort, I guess, from my emotional plea, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead. I gotta take off for a few minutes. I'm gonna leave it to you guys.
You said that you were.
Mr. Saris, can you take over? Can you kind of mod?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah.
Thanks.
You said that you were trying to live your a best life. I guess you through Islam. My question about that is when I stopped believing, the amount of time that I was giving to the church and to prayer and to study was then better used with friends and family and trying to improve the lives of others and my own life and the world in general. That was, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely wasted while I was being religious.
Okay, well, I mean, just think about, in the case that it is true that paradise and hell exist, if you are no longer giving time to the afterlife, then perhaps that for eternity, it it's not going to help you at the end. It's not going to be worth it. I mean, at this point, it's just a question of perspective.
Well, I found that when I stopped believing that there was anything after, my life became immensely more worth it. Life, I found, as far as I'm concerned, if you believe that eternity is going to come after your short time here is almost worth less.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by worthless. It's worth something to just amass for the afterlife and just become a better human. But like I said, it's just a question of perspective. If you don't believe in the afterlife, then yeah, you're probably better just enjoy this life. But if you believe in the afterlife, then you better make an effort to it, because you know what's gonna come with this. So
well, it's not so much about enjoying life, but
it's just a way to speak.
Yeah, but for me, it's about trying to leave the world a better place than when I came into it, because that's basically, if there's any kind of afterlife, it's in the ripples that I leave when I'm dead, and that's all you really get after you're gone, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. That's your unit of measurement, but it's not necessarily true.
Well, it'll be true that I will have effects on people after I'm dead.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the best. According to truth itself, it might not be the best thing to do for you and for others. That's just a question of perspective at this point. I mean,
maybe, but while I was being religious, my thoughts of how I was going to live my life was always self-serving. It was about how I'm going to benefit after I'm dead. And as soon as that all stopped, I became absolutely altruistic, where it's all about other people. Other people come before me because my life is finite and this world's going to keep going, and I'm not.
Okay, well, like I said, I mean, just think about it this way. In the case that religion was true, and also religion doesn't force you to just live your life selfishly or for yourself or whatever you want to call it, but in the case that it's true, you're not doing the best thing for yourself, and even for the others that you're maybe pushing on this road.
See, that begs the question of what is the best life? If you are saying what's best, so if I spend my life feeding the poor and clothing them and doing all the things, but I lack a belief in God, even though I did all these good things, am I still to be punished? Am I going, did I not do good?
Well, according to the holy books, yes, you will be punished if you don't have faith.
If the only real true predication upon me getting to paradise is to believe in the God, regardless of my actions upon this world, then that's a God that's not worthy of belief in the first place.
Not necessarily regardless of your actions, but you need faith.
Well,
No. You need faith. If you do all kind of good actions but you have no faith, it's not going to work. But if you have faith and you do all kind of crimes, well, maybe it's not going to work either. You need actions that are justified by
Okay, now this is I have a contingency on this, right? But like I don't know if that's the right word, but I have a conflict on this. If you have to have faith for this stuff to count, that means none of this can be selfless. It's not even possible. You have to be doing this for your afterlife. It's all selfish.
Not necessarily, because
it has to be.
No, because
I'd even posit that selflessness doesn't actually exist.
Faith is a state of heart, or a state of how you are, a state of self, and it means that you're doing things because you believe in God and you believe in the values that come with it, and it, so
if I believe in all the values and not God, I'm still screwed.
Right.
So I have to believe that I'm doing this for God to save me, for me to be okay.
Well, you have to believe in God. Like
that in no way can be selfless then.
Why not? Because just because you
you're
believe
acting
in
upon self-interest.
No, but that's
no.
No.
You take two people, give them similar or almost identical lives.
Right.
One believes, the other does not. The one who believes gets into paradise, the other does not. That means faith is predicated upon you doing it for yourself. That's it. That's the only reason you would ever believe.
No, exactly. That's you who's saying that. You're saying that people who have faith only do good things in order to be saved. But no, they do good things because why would only faithless people be able to do good things? Yeah, exactly. So why would it be selfless just because you have faith to do good things? No, you do good things because you're a good person.
That goes back to my idea of selflessness is not actually possible, because every single thing we do is in self-interest. Even you helping others isn't really for helping others, is to give you that self-satisfaction that you are helping others. That's why.
That's ego. That's ego. Like that's
exactly.
literally what ego is. But
exactly.
that's not necessarily. That's not necessarily
true. Every single thing we do is ego. You cannot get rid of ego.
Maybe that's why you do things, but that's not somebody who helps people because he believes that it's important. Is that possible? Anybody here believes that it's possible that someone helps people because he believes in that, or is it always an ego thing?
Well, I mean, I guess even if you did believe in it, then that would be like your mantra, I guess. I mean,
that would be
I don't know.
Ego expressing itself.
But as far as my mantra, I guess, is I want to leave the world better than I came into it. So I do nice things for people because I'd like for, them to pass it on, and maybe the world becomes a nicer place. I don't know. That's my end goal. I guess that it could be ego too. I have no idea.
Well, they could be predicated that you want to leave it in better places because your progeny will be in this world after you're gone. So you want to make it a better place for them, which could be is a selfish reason.
Well, as far as I know, I will not. Well, I don't think I have any kids, and I don't plan on having any. So,
second that.
But is it so? You guys don't believe that it's possible to act outside of ego?
No, it's not. Every single thing we do is an expression of ourselves. You can, we can't tap into the subconscious except on very rare occasions, and even then, it takes a lot of effort to do so. Our subconscious is literally us. Our consciousness is becoming aware of what our subconscious wants. If you come up to a choice, left door or right door, no other indication as to what happens when you open either one, your subconscious has already made the choice. Your consciousness is just coming to terms with what choice you've made. That's why free will doesn't exist.
But ego doesn't mean that you're necessarily doing something good for yourself. You can do something good for yourself and it's not ego. Like that's not what ego. Ego is a form of gratification that doesn't necessarily have to do with good. Sometimes doing the good choice, like let's just say, you're saying, well, today I'm gonna do exercise, and instead of just eating garbage food and just doing what you want, That's not necessarily for your ego. It's just so that you can have more good done to you. I mean, it's not, ego is not, I don't think it means that you're helping yourself. That's not what ego means.
Well, but staying healthy is self-preservation. How's that not ego?
Exactly.
Right, because ego is not necessarily. How do you guys define ego?
I mean, these aren't real things anyway.
Well, I mean,
ego's not a real thing.
Going back to
it's old, it's obsolete.
Yeah, going back to the faith thing, I think the difference is that regardless of what you do, if you do nice things, it's almost like an accidental byproduct of you doing for yourself first.
Exactly. That's what. Thank you.
Yeah, but ego has to do with some kind of superficial, inflated sense of importance or things like that. It doesn't have to do with just doing the right thing for yourself. Even like some people, they do the right thing, and their ego just want to do the bad thing. I mean, it's not. I think you have a wrong definition of ego.
Well, ego's not always bad.
Ego is neutral.
Ego has to do, with just some easy gratification, some, just trying to be superficially important and things like that. It doesn't have to do necessarily with just righteous work. You're trying to live good and be a good person, not to feed your ego, but just precisely to go against it and just live a better life.
Okay, ego, the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious and is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity. You cannot separate ego from any single thing you do. Ego is you. Literally everything you do comes from ego. That's it.
I can find you a different definition. A person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance.
Right. That's not what we're talking about, though.
But that's another definition of ego.
But that's not the definition we're talking about.
That's the philosophical ego you're talking about.
And we're not talking about the same thing then.
But you were just defining ego in the wrong context. We've been talking about the same thing this whole time.
Okay, then so we're talking about the self, right?
Yes.
That what you want to talk? Well, sure. You're doing good thing for your own self, for your soul, and being good with others is a way to share that around and help yourself on top of that. That is true.
If you had, like, if God came to you in a dream and said, you know what, it doesn't matter what you do, you ain't getting into heaven. As a matter of fact, you're going to hell. How would that change the way you live your life?
No, because it's a defeatist stance. I mean, I wouldn't just abandon it. There's no point. Like, why would I just abandon it? I might as well. It could just be a false dream. And
oh no, I'm not saying it's a false dream. I mean, you feel it all the way down to your core that you are hellbound, and you can even feel it in your soul. You have no chance of going into heaven, and you're 100% sure of it.
Well, I mean, if I'm 100% sure of it, I mean, I still have this mentality that I'm probably just being confused, or it might as well just be worth trying. There's no point in just abandoning. Like, even if I'm sure, I'm not my own judge. That's the thing. I'm not.
Oh no, you're getting judged. You are judged. Right. He comes down and just like, you, Zealot, going to hell. So when you die, that's where you're going. I don't care what you do. You can save the world a million times. You're gone.
In a dream?
No, he comes down. Everybody sees him. He points at you and says, you're going to hell. You have no chance of going to heaven. Screw you. I don't care what you do. I hate you.
Okay, well, hey, if that's the case, I mean, who knows? Who knows what I would do? Maybe I would stop. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd be like arrogant enough to keep trying.
See, that's so weird. You see, you would be arrogant enough to keep trying.
If God himself tells me that I'm going to hell, yeah, it'd be arrogant to just say, no, I'm going to paradise, forget. No, wouldn't it?
See, I don't know. I don't like my decision making isn't predicated at all by where I'm going after I die. And for you, it obviously is, and that's what was saying since the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I probably would still try to live a good and healthy life nonetheless. If that's your question, maybe, maybe I wouldn't pray if that was the case. Maybe there's a few religious commitments that I wouldn't go for, but it doesn't mean that everything I would do. And if we're talking about ego in the sense of the self, yeah, maybe I still do things for myself, but it doesn't mean that I would become the kind of arrogant person who lives his life arrogantly only for self gratification and superficial.
That is all you are doing. Every single person is living for their own self gratification.
No, I mean, I think that if you're doing good things, yourself will be affected, but it's not necessarily the only reason to do things. But of course, it's going to impact your own self.
Doing quote unquote good things that helps others is nothing but a byproduct of your ego and yourself and your self gratification.
What if you're doing sacrifice for this? Why would it be self gratifying? If you're not being recognized, if who's going to gratify you? You're suffering from that.
Yourself.
When you're doing the
hard
hard
thing, gratification from.
How about when people say the truth, okay, and they ruin their career, they take a lot of risks, they lose a lot of friends, etc. Where's the gratification
from telling the truth? That's
not
where
necessarily.
The self-gratification comes from. Yes,
not necessarily. No,
yes,
they're saying the truth.
They would do it.
They're saying the truth because they want to live by the truth, not just for gratifications.
I can argue this too, but by telling the truth, they are trying to improve society. By improving society or the whole or the group, they raise themselves up with the group. When you do that,
sometimes when you try to improve society, you're trying, but you're condemning yourself, and you will never taste the fruits of this. And maybe history will do something. They won't represent you right, and they'll put you like the bad guy. And also, your life, yourself, will go down on every levels. Like quality of life, life expectancy, self. Even when so many people just criticize you, you might kind of start to believe it or be psychologically affected by it. But you did the right thing because you want to live a life out of truth. And it's not just sometimes you're doing things that won't help your whole self. You'll go against yourself, but you'll do something good because you believe in that.
Well, you see, everybody, like, this is you said some things that are pretty telling about truth being good and you being good. People want to think of themselves as good. So if you were to knowingly lie to somebody, you would think of yourself as less good. Therefore, to keep up your feeling like you're good, you might tell the truth even though it'll destroy you in every other way in order to keep that feeling.
But why would it be just keep a feeling? You just want to stay true, not necessarily feel like you're true. Sometimes the whole world will make you feel like you're wrong, and you'll start feeling this way. You're just doing it because that's what you believe in.
Well, a lot of people, beliefs like inform actions. That's just something that happens. But people, I've heard this a million times, where people would be in a bad position, like ostracized from their family, and they'd be like, "Well, at least I was true to myself." That, like, it's gratifying to know that at least you were true to yourself.
There's probably a lot of people who try to gratify themselves in this way. That's true. It doesn't mean that it's always like this.
Can I just interject for a second? Virillion, is there something wrong with your mic? Because your picture has been lit up for the last while and we haven't heard a word from you.
I'm on push to talk, so I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were trying to say something this whole time.
I couldn't quite say much anyway. I think you guys have got it covered.
Oh, sorry about that. But I mean, I can't tell if it's like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know about the ego and stuff like that. I don't know exactly how that stuff works. I just know what, like, the life that I live. I know that I try to be true to myself. I guess everybody does. And I feel good by doing that. And I do know what you're talking about when it comes to people like saying things about you, and you might start believing lies that other people say. It's something that's happening to me currently while I'm trying to apply for disability, and my body doesn't work, and the government keeps trying to make excuses about why it does. And I start thinking that I'm being a baby, and then I'll like get up and I'll be like, okay, you know what? Maybe I am being a baby. I'll try to grab this plate that's over shoulder height, and that wrecks me for several days because I believed that maybe I was being a baby.
Yeah, I mean, that's sometimes like the only thing that you're only really doing it for is because that's a value that you believe in, and you can say you're doing it for yourself in this way, but on every level of every other aspects of the self is going to be affected by this, and that's it, like you said, you're trying to get a plate and your body suffers from it because you started to believe them, so that's just what it is. I mean, we have values and we must make sacrifice for them at times. We must sacrifice our own selves for these values because it's just, when you have a certain philosophy and certain beliefs, you must stay true to them. It's just that's unconditional. I mean, it's not about the self at this point. It has nothing to do with the self. It just has to do with what you believe in and how you want to conduct your life. It's not for gratification of any sort.
You say that, but at the same time, I could ask, like, why? Why even bother?
There are electrochemical processes in your brain that you don't even know are happening when you do things. And when you do things that gratify your quote-unquote self or ego, you get all kinds of electrochemical processes happening that please you for doing so. You cannot separate self from any single action you do. It's impossible.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that sometimes you're doing things that go against yourself. Have you ever done something that you knew was right?
By definition, you cannot do it.
Yeah, you can sacrifice yourself to do things, of course. There's a lot of people in history that have done it.
But that's still part of yourself that wants to do that.
No, sometimes you don't even want to do it, really. Like, a part of yourself maybe wants, but the rest of it doesn't want to. Have you ever done something?
A part of you wants to do it, therefore it is self.
But not the whole self.
Therefore, it doesn't matter.
There's a big part of the self that doesn't want. Have you ever done something that you had to sacrifice yourself, that you took a lot of risk, that wasn't pleasing at all, that didn't bring any gratification?
Nobody has ever done that.
Oh, there's plenty of people who do that.
No, there is always some sense of self-gratification out of every single thing you do.
There's a certain sense of the self, but it's not. It's sometimes it's just a very small part, and this part is only your belief, and
that doesn't matter if it's any part, because you cannot separate self from action. You can't.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's not necessarily gratifying. That's ego, to only try to gratify your own self. But sometimes you're not going to be gratified.
Yeah, sometimes you might fail to gratify yourself, but there's always attempts.
Right. Well, you guys only see this as a gratification, or I don't think sometimes. I mean, it's not gratifying at all, but you got to do.
Look, I used to be the sacrifice guy, Like when I could work, like I was the guy who would work double shifts and work until I bled and wouldn't ever ask for a raise or time off and stuff like that. I was the guy, and well, I'm in therapy now, but I didn't understand until I got to therapy that I was doing that to myself because I was so hooked on being the guy.
Right.
So if you want to sacrifice, then you might also be hooked on being the guy, but that's still you gratifying yourself.
I think I think that we're confusing two terms, and like it's like this. I mean, sure, if we're gonna say, well, it's for our own selves and to do good for ourselves, but I don't think it connects necessarily to this idea of ego per se, unless we're just saying, well, ego is the self, sure, but ego usually that's not what it means. It means it's some kind of like you're saying, gratification. It's like trying to live your life right is not necessarily gratification. It may be gratifying in a certain sense, but if you're seeking gratification, there's probably other things that will bring much more gratification quickly, and much easier. And
Well, there's one thing that's very telling that immediately sticks out is that you have a definition of what it is to live life right, and that could easily be gratifying to live that way if you believe that it's the right way to live.
sure, I mean, I I agree with you guys in the sense that I don't disassociate the self like completely, but I think that sometimes the self is not gonna be it's gonna take some hits, it's gonna take some sacrifice, and that's it, that's the only difference. I don't believe that the word ego is the appropriate one for this. I just think ego, if we think about what ego means, we can say, there's definitions that have more to do with some kind of carnal reality, not necessarily like almost opposite of morality. And that's the only line I'm trying to trace here. That's the only point of disagreement that we have. I'm not sure if that's this kind of ego that you guys believe in, or you're just believing in the self, but it seems to me like you're believing in the ego that goes against moral principles. And that's the only main distinction I think we have right now.
Well, go ahead, Rez.
Sorry. Can I just jump in here? This is going to be a really personal question, Zealot. Do you believe that if you saw a child being harmed, you would step in and help them?
I hope I would, but to just say yes, I mean, especially under all circumstances, that would just be pretension.
Right, but let's just say, say a bully's beating up on them.
I would hope I do.
Example.
I hope I do. I think it's definitely the right thing to do, but I don't want to be pretentious.
So would you say that's part of your moral code, that if you can help someone reasonably speaking, you would, if you had the power to do so?
Yeah, I would say if you can help people, you probably have to help people.
Right, then you're already more moral than the God you supposedly believe.
No, I wouldn't say so, because I think that when you're judging this, you're applying a moral criteria that you to God, and you don't really understand why he's doing things. So sometimes, and first of all, the other thing is that God is not responsible for the actions of people here. We're only in this life so that we can act relatively freely, right? I mean, I'm not saying it's full free, but relatively freely, act according to who we are, and then we'll be judged by that in the real life that matters, the afterlife. So that's why these things are happening now, these form of injustice, but it's not God who's doing them. And at the end of the day, in relation to eternity, this life is not that important.
Okay, well, here's an extreme example. A dog owner has 2 dogs.
Okay.
They're pretty powerful dogs. Let's say they're both German Shepherds. Injects them both with rabies. and then sits down on a chair, pops open a beer, and watches them tear each other to pieces. Would you say that's a good person or a bad person?
You know what? I would say that's a bad person because the reason he's doing it is probably not good. Well, I could be wrong. Maybe he's doing it for a great reason, but I don't think that, just I would presuppose that it's not a good reason. Like, I think you're presupposing that when God allows these things to happen, you're presupposing that it's not a good reason, but you don't necessarily know why
If God
he's letting these
designed
things happen.
us and God created us and he gave us all these flaws that predispose us towards things like killing each other, and then sits back and watch and does nothing to intervene and do something about it, and we would call a dog owner that does that a terrible person, you then logically consistently have to say that God is a terrible person for doing that. You cannot have any other conclusion and stay logically consistent.
I think you just ignore what I said. I just told you that it depends on why the person is letting these things happen, and I gave you even the context of this life and the afterlife.
Matter.
So of course it matters.
No, it doesn't.
Well, okay. I mean,
because the why didn't matter for the guy with the two dogs. So why does it matter for God?
Because of the reason why he did it, the intention.
But the why didn't matter for the guy with the two dogs. You didn't ask why he did it in that case, but you did.
Because they don't have
God.
the same intention. They're not doing it for the same reasons.
But you can't know that.
He did say that the guy with the dogs could have had a good reason, but he didn't know.
I did. Exactly. And you're exactly in this situation
what good reason
where
could there possibly be?
That's why I'm presupposing that he doesn't have one, but he could. And just like for God, you don't know what good reason he has. You're presupposing that it's.
If you come up with one good reason as to why the dog owner would do that, can't come up with any good reasons for why God would do that.
Yeah. And I mean, I already gave you one, but let's just say, right, that there's two people who are evil people, and they're just killing each other. I mean, God will judge them, or even if there's a good person and an evil person and they're both killing each other's, God will judge them.
Manic Pandez in chat, not understanding abusive action is not an excuse for that abuse. Exactly right. That's what I'm getting at. There is no excuse for having the power to stop something that you put them in the position to do and then not do it and be considered moral. I'm sorry. There's just no possible way you can do that.
But you see, that's the thing. It's not. The difference here too, there's another distinction, is that God didn't inject into these people anything. These people, they are who they are. Like they've made these choices.
If God designed us in the first place, then yes, he's completely responsible.
No, he gave you a will, and some people
we were just talking about the fact that we don't have free will.
I'm not saying a free will, I'm saying a will. You have a certain will, okay? And you will be influenced by many things, but you still have a certain will. Do you believe that there's absolutely no will at all? That it's just pure determinism?
Yes. With maybe some quantum physics getting slightly in the way. Otherwise, almost completely deterministic.
Well, that's interesting because it almost brings us back to this idea of contingency.
By the way, if someone else wants to step in here, I'm not the only person here. I feel like I'm talking over.
Well, I'm deterministic. Like, I have the same kind of thought, but that's besides the thing. I kind of would like to, because I don't know too much about like the situation when it comes to like what do you call it? Trying to say that God is like people and has the same kind of responsibilities or whatever, or we could judge him the same way. I don't know. I'm not 100% on that, but I do have a question revolving God, the God that Zealot does worship.
Sure, go for it.
How do you know anything about him or her or it?
Right. Well, I could answer this question on many different levels. I mean, it depends where you want to bring it, I guess. But
well,
I mean,
I'm talking about the intimate knowledge that you have been saying here about how he's going to judge and about how he did this and he did that and he might have good reasons for this.
oh,
I don't
okay,
know
okay.
anything about him. I can't, but you do, and I'd like to bridge that gap.
Well, I mean, the reason why I'm going in this direction is because, well, I already have a belief, and that might be more interesting for you to ask about them. And it's based on these belief and what has been revealed in the books and by the prophets, peace upon them. And it's just that's how I am. That's how I have this knowledge. Now, why do I believe in these things? That might be more the question, but
well, okay, let me define knowledge. I am holding a laser pointer. I have knowledge that I'm holding a laser pointer. If I read about myself holding a laser pointer in a book, I would not have knowledge of that.
Okay.
So I'm asking where your knowledge of what God does comes from.
Well, in the case of the judgment, it has to do with what I've read. But why do I believe in what I've read is not just because I've read it. But it
that's what I'm asking. What's
right.
The other things besides the reading?
Right. So it has to do with the nature of reality, like where reality comes from. I mean, we were talking about the argument of contingency earlier, and I believe.
You believe that God's going to judge people because of contingency?
No, I believe in what has been revealed about the judgment, because I believe that God is a necessary aspect of reality, and I also believe that this supreme being has it makes sense in every way that it would explain reality, and in the apparition of the prophets and everything. Like I believe in what God says because I believe in God, if you want, right?
What if God super duper believes in chance, and when you die, he's going to flip a coin instead of judging you?
Well, that would not be conform to what has been said.
Well, I mean, how could you know that what I'm saying could not be a possibility? Like, how do you know that it's judging and not just flipping a coin in chance?
Right. Well, because like I said, I mean, like the real question is more, why do I believe in what is said? But once I believe in what is said, I'll believe what is said. You see? Like, I think that's the real argument to make here, because I mean, I can tell you, well, the action of God claims what he's going to do, but I cannot tell you, I believe in it because I believe in prior things that brings me there.
Yeah.
And these things, one of these things have to do with the argument, that we had earlier. It has to do also with the prophecies. There's a lot of prophecies that have happened. It has to do with the the personal revelatory acts that I've had, that I've explained you about the dreams. It has to do with just when I'm reading about the prophets, their story, peace upon them. It has to do with how I view them, what I take from that. I mean, it has to do with many things why I believe in those writings. You see, like, once you accept the part.
Let me come clean with you. I have not. This has not been like a completely honest line of questioning, because let me tell you where I'm coming from, and then maybe you can form your answer around it. When they did like studies where they were trying to like see when people think about stuff, like what part of the brain does it come from when you say that
Okay.
this is a right thing, and when they say that God says it's the right thing, and it comes from the exact same place. So
Okay.
when you say God judges blah blah blah, I immediately assume that that's just you judging blah blah blah. So How do you know that God thinks in a way that you don't think?
Well, like I already said, it has to do with me accepting the fundamental parts of this message leads me to accept the other parts of this message that are proven by the more fundamental part that I've accepted. That would be the link that I have.
So where would you disagree with God and his line of thinking?
I wouldn't.
Right, because that's you. That's you. That's your thinking. It ain't God at all. It's you.
Well, when we're talking about the judgment, it's not me. It's what is written.
No, you just said that that everything God would do, you would agree with, and that's because everything you would do, you would agree with. It's your mind.
Well, no, because there's a lot of things that I'm not doing, and there's also a lot of things that I ignore and that I may not understand, and that I may even disagree, but I know that I would be wrong for disagreeing if it really came from.
Right, because every sense of your right and wrong is God's right and wrong.
Not necessarily, but I believe that.
So where do you differ with God then? I'm curious. I want to know where does he think that you disagree?
Well, my limitation would explain why I differ.
Okay. I just want to know where, like, God would do this, but if I was him, I would not have done that.
No, that that would just even if I thought that it was wrong, I would be wrong. But like plain and simple, because I know that God. Well, yeah, but it wouldn't be my idea that what he's doing is right, because I don't even know how it's right. But I don't even know how it's right. I don't even see it right. But I know I'm mistaken for thinking
everything that you think
is
right and wrong is what he thinks is right and wrong. Don't you find that a little bit convenient?
A little bit suspect, yeah.
No, but I literally just said that if he did something that I thought was wrong, and I think it's wrong, right? Like I cannot help myself but say, "Oh, this is wrong." I mean, there's even there's a surah, if you want to read it, maybe not. It's the surah of the cavern, and it's about that. It's about Moses and Alexander and another one. And every time that one of them does something, the other says, "Oh, but that's wrong. Why would you do that?" And it's pretty much like what you're saying. It's people, they like, I don't necessarily have the possibility to know why God does something, why is it right or wrong, but I know that he does the right thing because he's omniscient, he's just, he's truthful, he knows better than me, basically. And that's how I know it.
You know what, see this, let me translate what I hear when you say that.
Okay.
You're saying that you have the ability to know, like, way better than anybody. Like, you have it all figured out, because when you say God, that's your mind, because you and him are just like linked. You apparently don't disagree with him on anything, and you agree with him on everything. So therefore, you and God's mind, they are parallel.
I just said the opposite. I just said that there are things that I don't know why it's being done like this, but that God knows why, and that because of his quality of omniscience and just and being just and everything, he knows better than me. That's all I'm saying. I'm not even saying that I understand why.
See, that's the thing. If I said that somebody else knew better than me, then I would trust their judgment on it. My judgment wouldn't be relevant. I would trust their judgment over mine, and their judgment would override mine, and therefore we would still be in sync. It doesn't matter if you think something's right or wrong, you just override it with what you think God is saying is right and wrong. So you don't have any difference in opinion.
No, because I don't necessarily know what he considers right or wrong. I'm not saying that. We will know probably on Judgment Day when I'll be judged, and I'll see why I was wrong, or where I was wrong, if you prefer. But as of right now, I don't necessarily know. There's probably a lot of things that I consider good.
Clockwork. You unmuted. Are you looking to say something?
who?
Yes, you.
Two questions. How do you know God is a he? And how do you know God is right?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that God is a male. If that's your question, I just say he. It's just a way to speak, But I wouldn't say he's a male or a female. I don't believe he has a sex or a gender or whatever, And the second question, why is he always right? Because, I think it's the end, is it? Right.
All right. You can have the last word, Zealot.
Oh, yeah, man. I just think that he's just because it's one of his attributes. I mean, it's a stance that he took. He chose this stance and this position, and it's just it's who he is. I mean, it's part of it's a part of belief that comes with accepting the rest. It won't necessarily be justified if you don't accept the other aspects of this belief. It's like a secondary belief, if you want. Yes, I'll try to to rethink my argument. I'll try to rethink it because.
And I'm curious, if you could come up with something that you differ when it comes to God's mind and your mind, I would love about it.
Oh, I can give you personal examples all you want. No, but I will.
Oh, you're into the YouTube stream. Okay. I'm around. Oh, do what you want to do.
I guess it'd just be like right click and do things.
Oh, you know, I forgot to actually mute I actually didn't unmute myself to the outside, so they didn't hear a damn thing that I said. I forgot to unmute. So
No way.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, really. Because I had the internal muted because it's two mutes. But anyways, guys, I got to go. Thanks for watching this, and I just was pointing out to the inside people here that this is the real Great Debate community. This is one that's been mentioned in two different journals now. This is the one that we're working closely with Reasons to Believe and other organizations. And so I know you guys have been around for a very long time, and you guys know the difference between this one and those other ones that are just set up to troll people and to just talk shit. And that's just not what we're about. We're here to help people. We want to have these conversations. And I appreciate, Zealot, you coming in and being very civil and very talkative about this kind of stuff. I love these kind of conversations. So you're the people that we want to reach out to. and have these conversations.
Sorry for yelling at you.
And Rez is just a dick.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
I didn't hear
Rez,
that part.
Rez
I was
was
busy.
fine. Rez was great. You know?
Awesome. All right. Good night, guys. Now for the
Good
real
night.
life. Good night.
Later.
All right. Good night.
No.